The story begins with a boy named Noroa epically getting his rear whooped by a bunch of bullies from the Adventurers Guild for daring to ask for payment for him carrying their equipment. But the party leader thinks that Noroa's smelly G-ranked bottoms should be grateful enough for even getting a chance to work with a real party. We find out that our poor boy has been carrying their luggage for an entire week, and instead of receiving any compensation, the bullies have just been using him as bait to lure out monsters. The party leader puffs up his chest and grabs Noroa by the collar and tells him that he's a B-ranked adventurer with 3 equipment slots and that he should know his place as an insect with no slots. Unable to resist, Noroa simply apologizes before the party leader kicks him away and calls him by his title, Noroa the Zero. Later that day, we see our boy pressed against the window of an equipment shop, while dreaming about the day he will be able to equip the gleaming armor on display. In this world, equipment is everything, and even items like scriptures, writing tools, and books are classified as such. However, merely owning them means nothing unless one can awaken the latent power hidden within. This power can only be drawn out when the equipment acknowledges its owner, sealing the bond through a successful soul contract. Apart from this, there is yet another complexity that the number of equipment contracts one can form is defined at birth and labeled as the equipment slots. Those with only 1 slot are considered mere trash, while possessing 2 makes for a decent combatant. Having 3 slots, like the bully from before, marks a person as a seasoned warrior. Also, there are individuals who are born with up to 7 slots, and are hailed as the heroes of mankind. Noroa, infamous among the masses as Noroa the Zero for his complete lack of equipment slots, finds himself glaring at yet another piece of gear. The moment his hand brushes against it, the item tumbles down, and he quickly apologizes to the shop owner, Yabuki. Rather than scolding him, Yabuki simply remarks that staring at it long enough won't magically convince him to hand over such an expensive piece. As Yabuki holds up a majestic sword, explaining that he has yet to appraise it, Noroa's obsession kicks in. Though his heart is already devoted to his beloved A-ranked armor, his so-called wifey, he can't help but dream of one day marrying a blade as magnificent as this. Suddenly, Noroa hears a girl's voice and looks around, wondering if his destined bride equipment has finally appeared. His eyes land on a small, cute doll, making him question whether the voice actually came from it. Shaking off the thought, he turns to Yabuki and with slight hesitation, asks if he keeps any cursed equipment in his shop. Cursed equipment belongs to a notorious category of wicked artifacts that latch onto an adventurer with just a mere touch and consumes one of their precious equipment slots. Word has it that to this day no method has been found to remove these items once bound. The worst part is the toll one must pay in the form of a condition demanded in exchange for their power. Being asked again about these wicked pieces of equipment, Yabuki gets serious and explains that sometimes they do end up mixed with regular ones, but no adventurer is reckless enough to touch them without a second thought. Seeing Noroa clench his fists with a look of determination, the big guy warns him to stay away from them. Noroa then asks if he is saying this because these items are illegal, to which Yabuki responds that the real issue is far worse and he has seen countless adventurers ruin their lives because of these cursed artifacts. Yabuki tries to scare the boy, warning that those who manage to survive with just a loss of sanity are considered lucky because the usual outcome of coming into contact with such items is death. Noroa dismisses the warning, refusing to fall for scary stories, but Yabuki remains firm, giving examples of cursed items including a gun that randomly unalives a person and a doll that takes the life of anyone who holds it. Despite his best efforts, Yabuki sighs, realizing there is no convincing the stubborn kid to stay away from these dangerous artifacts. Reluctantly, he spills the beans about the Tomb of No Return, mentioning that as far as he knows, a treasure chest lies deep within it, and is said to contain a cursed piece of equipment that no one has dared to explore. The big guy mocks Noroa, teasing that if he is this excited over cursed equipment, he might as well try looting that item, though chances are he would end up dead long before even reaching the chest. Yabuki goes on to argue that having one less person bothering him every day wouldn't be such a bad thing. Hearing all this, Noroa simply bows to pay his respects and takes his leave. As Noroa steps out, he gets fired up, fully set on getting his hands on this so-called cursed equipment. Although he understands the risks that come along with it, so he is eager to have equipment of his own. People call him Noroa the Zero because he supposedly has no slots, but the truth is he has been keeping a secret. He may not be able to equip anything, but what he has been hiding all this time are his slots. Pulling up his adventurer's panel, He reveals the 9,999 equipment slots written at the end of it. His stats might be worse than the average adventurer, but his capacity is beyond anything imaginable, though things aren't as simple as they seem. In his slot lies a cursed accessory that only allows him to equip cursed equipment, making his absurd number of slots almost meaningless. The strangest part is that Naroa has no idea when or how he ended up with this item, nor does he know what it looks like or where it even is on his body. Knowing that he can equip as many items as he wants as long as they are cursed, he recalls a hazy memory from his past. Somewhere deep in his memories, he faintly remembers a lady telling him that one day, he will become stronger than anyone else. These words served as a lifeline for Naroa, giving him a glimmer of hope to live on. He further remembers the lady asking him to search for cursed equipment and save her. Feeling determined once again, he waits for the next morning to arrive. As dawn breaks, he sneaks after his former party, trailing them into the Tomb of No Return, which is a B-ranked dungeon. Knowing fully well that reaching the dungeon's depths alone is nearly impossible for a weakling like him, he decides his best bet is to leech off a strong party. Luck seems to be on his side, as the party leader happens to be the strongest adventurer in town. Given that they already explored this dungeon yesterday, Naroa figures they must be planning to clear out the whole place this time. His best gamble now is to stick to their shadows, letting them carve a path through the dungeon while he waits for the perfect moment to snatch the cursed equipment for himself. Out of nowhere, a crappy old E-ranked skeleton pops up and grabs Naroa's arm. Naroa, realizing he might lose track of the party, quickly pulls out a bronze tier sword that he can't even equip. Thinking his training should be enough to handle this, he swings in an attempt to stun the skeleton and make a break for it. But the thing doesn't even flinch. Instead, it smacks him straight into the wall. His sword gets completely shattered, and before he can even think of a backup plan, the skeleton appears before his eyes. The scary sight scares the crap out of the little boy, and he bolts out of the dungeon like his life depends on it. As Naroa steps outside, he wonders if the party has already cleared out the entire dungeon. He looks down at his shattered sword and feels a wave of disappointment. Even though he couldn't equip it, it had taken him years to save up for that bronze tier weapon. Coming to terms with the fact that he couldn't even defeat the weakest of monsters, he finally decides to give up on his dream. Reality hits him hard as he starts believing he will always be a zero. Just then, a loud explosion shakes the ground. He turns to see Yubuki's entire shop reduced to rubble alongside his beloved adamant armor. But spotting Yubuki unharmed, he feels relieved and quickly rushes in to pull him out of the wreckage. Yubuki tells him that this is the work of the party, who lost their minds after coming into contact with the cursed equipment from the Tomb of No Return. As Naroa spots the party leader standing in front of him, he wonders if this is what the so-called cursed equipment actually looks like. Yubuki urges him to run as far as possible, warning that hiding won't save him from an opponent wielding cursed equipment. Meanwhile, he pulls a shield and sword from the wreckage and forms a soul contract with them. Extending his hand toward the little boy, he reassures him that he's been through worse and will get him out of this. But before Naroa can even reach for his hand, he watches in horror as the party leader slashes Yubuki down in an instant, splitting his body into pieces. As the corrupt party leader steps closer, Naroa's entire body locks up at the sight of death looming over him. The man grabs him by the collar and lifts him off the ground with ease. For a moment, Naroa considers struggling free, but then he stops himself, realizing that even if he did escape, he'd just go back to the same miserable life as before. With that thought weighing on him, he gives in, calmly accepting his grim fate. Closing his eyes, he hopes for a painless death. Before long, everything fades into darkness until a sudden loud construction noise jolts him awake. As he opens his eyes, he notices the sun already sinking below the horizon, making it painfully clear that he has been asleep for over 10 hours. A familiar voice reaches his ears, and he quickly realizes it's the same one he heard from that doll in Yabuki's shop. The doll impatiently urges him to hurry up and equip her. As Naroa stands there in surprise, the doll grows even more impatient, pointing out that even a clueless fool could equip a cursed item like her with just a simple touch. Trying to make it sound more tempting, she adds that she's free for a limited time offer, making Naroa wonder if she usually comes with some kind of hidden fee. Seeing the cursed equipment he had been hoping for right in front of him, Naroa couldn't help but move toward it. But before he could reach her, the corrupt creep pounces at the doll, while Naroa barely manages to escape. He assumes the doll must be done for, yet to his surprise, he finds her legs sticking out from the rubble. The attack that had reduced the adamant armor to ruins had barely made her let out a complaint about the pain. The doll points out that since he dodged the attack, it must mean he actually wants to live. She tells him that if that's the case, he needs to equip her immediately. Hearing this, Noroa starts thinking about his life and is just about to give up again. But then the words of the woman from his memory echo in his mind. Clinging to the last bit of hope he has left, he reaches out and picks up the doll. Noroa is suddenly hit with a splitting headache before finding himself sinking into the null void alongside the doll. The next thing he knows, he's lying on the rubble of the shop, struggling to get back on his feet. The system chimes in, providing details about the doll, revealing that her name is Jinx Straw and she belongs to the 7 Cursed Dolls series. However, she comes with a condition that completely wipes out her owner's luck stat. Noroa wonders if all the chaos he just endured was actually a soul contract, but the thought of finally equipping something lifts his spirits. Meanwhile, Jinx starts dancing, celebrating her newfound ability to move freely. Wasting no time, Noroa checks if he can unequip the annoying pest only to find out that she's clinging to him like an unskippable tutorial. When Noroa calls the doll by her first name, she immediately kicks off a debate, acting offended that he is being too casual. But the second he tries calling her Miss, she suddenly changes her tune, acting all high and mighty, saying that now he is being way too formal. Jinx then tells him about her ability, which she calls equipment hijacking. She explains that it bends the logic of the world and allows someone to break past the system's restrictions. She goes on to say that with her power, he can easily snatch equipment that is already equipped by others. Suddenly, a key materializes in Noroa's hand, and the doll comes sprinting toward him, yelling for him to stab her heart with it if he wants to overturn death itself. With no other option, Noroa clicks the key into her heart, unleashing the demonic powers of the 7 series doll equipment. Everything around him blurs, and the next thing he knows, he is jolted awake when Jinx hurls a stone straight at him. Noroa wakes up to find the SSS ranked cursed sword, Bloodlicker, resting in his hand. Jinx informs him that the sword is among the most powerful even within the cursed items, and it still has room to grow. Noroa's face lights up as he admires the sheer beauty of the weapon, prompting Jinx to grumble that she never got that kind of treatment when he first equipped her. Jinx then remarks that she is happy for him, considering he no longer has to remain a zero. As she confidently declares that he will become the most powerful, her words blend with the voice of the woman from Noroa's memories. She reaches out her hand, urging him to stop doubting himself and assuring him that he has the potential to become whatever he desires. As the scene shifts, Noroa sits on the rubble, mourning the destruction of his city, which had been reduced to ruins by a single cursed piece of equipment. However, his grief is abruptly interrupted when Jinx picks up the party leader's underwear and holds it up, pointing out that it's golden in color. Leaving his hometown behind, Noroa considers the risk of staying, knowing that the cursed equipment he now wears could bring even more trouble to the people. But now that he's gone, he wonders what he should do next. Seeing his gloomy expression, Jinx asks if he's all gloomy because he's hungry, then puts on a big smile, hoping it will cheer him up. She even tries making silly faces to get a laugh out of him, but when all her efforts go to waste, she ends up getting mad at him instead. Noroa suddenly realizes that for the first time in his life, someone is actually worried about him. As he walks through the peaceful forest, the tranquility does not last long as a ginormous, ranked evil bear appears out of nowhere, probably looking for some food. Fear grips Noroa as he tells Jinx they need to escape immediately, but she stops him, insisting that he unsheath his new cursed sword and cut the beast to pieces. Remembering Bloodlicker's condition makes him hesitate, but the big bad bear does not give him a moment to think, forcing him to reluctantly draw his sword. The moment the sword is unsheathed, Noroa feels a throbbing sensation as his consciousness shifts, sending him into a berserk state. In this uncontrollable frenzy, he charges straight at the big bad bear, only to find himself waking up later with no memories of what just happened. Jinx informs him that he has defeated the monster, but he struggles to believe her words. For the first time in his life, he has taken down a monster on his own, yet he cannot recall anything that happened after drawing the sword. The thought of losing control and going on a rampage worries him, but fortunately, the outcome turns out to be just perfect. Hearing all this, the lady doll argues that everything so far seems too good to be true. Not only can the boy possess as many cursed equipment as he wants, but he also ended up with her and the legendary SSS ranked Bloodlicker sword handed to him on a silver plate. Noroa finds her words making sense and struggles to understand how so many coincidences could happen. Suspecting that someone or something might be behind it all, Jinx then points out that even if someone is manipulating Noroa, all he needs to do is become stronger than them. She convinces him by adding that if he were to kick the bucket, she would be in serious trouble, with the trouble being that she would no longer get to enjoy those delicious meals at gourmet restaurants. With our guy successfully convinced, she suggests tackling a dungeon, arguing that it might reward him with more cursed weapons since the sword alone is not going to be enough. The thought excites our hero as he remembers that he has infinite slots for cursed equipment that only he can use. Seeing Jinx determined, Noroa agrees and takes her along. When he arrives at the Giant's Town Adventurers Guild, Jinx gets angry, arguing that she has been tricked since there is no dungeon here. Noroa calms the little lady down, telling her that they need to make some arrangements instead of barging straight into a dungeon. He explains that they will need permission from the guild because if they don't, their names might end up on the wanted list. Jinx replies that she finds such stupid, mindless procedures annoying, making Noroa realize that people might find it odd to see a doll sitting on his shoulder. As the boy enters the guild hall, laughter erupts everywhere, with people telling him to find somewhere else to play with dolls. Noroa quickly rushes over to the counter to get the paperwork done, knowing he won't be able to put up with this for long. The counter lady looks concerned, pointing out that the dungeon he wants to enter is S-ranked, while he himself is at the lowest rank. Thinking fast, Noroa makes up an excuse, claiming he is just a luggage carrier scouting the area in hopes of getting hired by a big party. The counter lady somehow buys it, though she warns him to be careful, reminding him that the guild lacks the resources to retrieve the body of a G-ranked adventurer from an S-ranked dungeon. Hearing the mention of G-rank, a big baldy strides over to the counter, mocking Noroa for thinking dungeons are a playground where he can play with dolls. Noroa quickly drops to his knees and apologizes, hoping the guy will leave him alone, but the brute steps closer and tries to pick up the doll. Jinx immediately slaps his hand away, warning him not to touch her. Noroa hurriedly whispers to Jinx, ordering her to stay quiet. The big guy assumes Noroa is some kind of puppet artist and was the one making the doll talk. He finds Noroa interesting and even offers him a spot as a luggage carrier for his B-ranked party, mocking that he would make a great meat shield and bait for monsters. Jinx responds with her signature moves, first punching and then kicking the big guy, knocking him to the ground. Noroa sighs in frustration, reminding her that he told her not to speak, but the doll argues that he never said anything about not punching. Realizing that everyone must see him as some kind of dangerous weirdo, Noroa dashes off toward the S-ranked dungeon known as the Spider's Passage. As he makes his way through the dungeon, he asks his guide, the Lady Doll, if it is safe for him to wield blood liquor, wondering if the place might collapse. Jinx reassures him, explaining that dungeons themselves are triple S-ranked equipment and that another triple S-ranked item like the sword cannot damage them. This comes as news to Noroa, as he never expected dungeons to be equipment. Just like that, he unknowingly steps on a web. As the scene transitions, Noroa is seen being chased by spider monsters, while he and Jinx coincidentally share a deep dislike for bugs. Jinx gives him the go-ahead, and Noroa quickly turns around, unsheathing his blood liquor. Entering Berserker mode, he loses himself in the battle and later wakes up lying on the ground, having taken down all the spiders. Getting back on his feet, he pushes forward, crediting all his success to blood liquor. He soon realizes he has leveled up to 30 and finds himself standing in front of the boss room once again, remarking that a single weapon was enough to get him this far. Jinx corrects him, saying he is wrong to think it was just because of a weapon, as he himself is truly strong. She praises him for his swordsmanship and his deep understanding of monsters and traps, arguing that his own abilities perfectly complement the power of his equipment even if his rusty brain lags behind. Upon being urged to respond, Noroa admits that he finds the praise embarrassing since he is not used to being complimented like this. Jinx then informs him that she is certain he will find cursed equipment inside the boss room, explaining that it tends to be higher ranked than normal equipment, and that the stronger the dungeon, the higher the rank of the equipment within it. She further elaborates that cursed equipment has always been considered the strongest, but people have misused it by handing it over to their slaves and making them wreak havoc on their enemies. She adds that because these items are so powerful, they come with conditions, but with the right combinations, those drawbacks can be easily negated. Praising herself, Jinx declares that she is by his side for a reason and was born to rule over cursed equipment. Wondering if there is any equipment more powerful than his Bloodlicker sword waiting for him, he steps into the boss room and finds a massive humanoid queen spider monster, the bringer of calamity, standing before him. Noroa knows that this queen spider is nothing compared to what he has faced so far. He trusts that he can rely on his sword, especially after gaining a few levels, but he remains cautious. Given his low defensive capabilities, a single hit could cost him his life. With this in mind, he becomes determined to land the first strike and dashes toward the spider monster, unleashing his sword and surrendering himself to berserk mode. When he comes back to his senses, he finds spider blood splattered everywhere, dripping from his sword, with the monster already defeated. Jinx comments that she was ready to jump into the battle this time, but never expected the spider to be such a weakling. Saying this, the little doll lady presents Noroa with a treasure chest. Excited, he eagerly cracks it open, expecting to find a ton of cursed equipment, but to his surprise, after all that effort, the dungeon's grand reward appears to be disappointment in its purest form. Noroa struggles to make sense of the strange artifact, feeling a wave of disappointment that this is all an S-rank dungeon had to offer. Jinx casually reminds him that his 0 luck stat wiped out most of the loot, completely ignoring the fact that she's the one who cursed him with it in the first place. Refusing to dwell on that, our protagonist convinces himself that quality always beats quantity. As Jinx points out that the artifact looks just as bland and boring as him, Noroa locks eyes with it like it's the high school crush who never gave him a chance and says that it's absolutely adorable. Jinx, completely misinterpreting his words, turns red and drops her usual smug attitude, only for Noroa to put her back in her place by showering the tiny sphere with poetic compliments before declaring that he's ready to put a ring on it. The tiny lady questions whether it even qualifies as equipment, but Noroa gives her an unimpressed look and tells her it's beyond obvious. He inwardly wonders if the little straw doll has wet hay for a brain, considering she can't even recognize her own people. Without hesitation, he picks up the orb, only for it to sprout a writhing mass of tentacles that slither up his arm before violently stabbing into his left eye. Jinx watches in pure horror as Noroa screams and collapses onto the ground. It doesn't take long to realize that his left eye has now been hijacked by the artifact, fittingly named the Cursed Eye. When Jinx nervously asks if he's okay, Noroa brushes it off and instantly shifts his focus to reading the item's description. The cursed compass trades sight in one eye for the ability to point its owner toward anything they desire, though if they fail to reach their target within a week, it won't hesitate to feast on his brain. Jinx shrugs and says it's really not that bad as long as he uses his non-existent brain. Realizing the artifact can track down anything, Noroa briefly considers using it to find the mysterious woman from his dream, the one he's supposed to save. But instead of getting ahead of himself and taking a one-way trip to the afterlife, he decides to hold off on that idea. Before he can dwell on it any further, Jinx gets hyped and urges him to test it out by tracking her down. As she hides away, Noroa activates his Sharingan and instantly spots behind the Spider Queen. Aside from a mild headache, the cursed compass seems to work in a pretty straightforward way, though Jinx notes that it doesn't differentiate whether a target is actually reachable. That gives our guy the big brain moment that he can set a maximum distance, so he dives into testing his theory. This puts a smug grin on Noroa's ugly mug as he's convinced that he found a cheat in his overpowered cursed artifact. However, he'll soon learn the hard way that it's not that simple. Excited about finishing their first mission, Jinx orders our hero to use his new cursed eye to hunt down the best gourmet restaurant in town. But Noroa ignores her absurd demand and steps onto the teleportation circle to head back when a squad of adventurers suddenly bursts into the boss room. The bald swordsman and his crew freeze in shock, struggling to process that the S-rank Spider Queen got absolutely wrecked by one guy. His jaw nearly unhinges when he realizes it's the same weirdo he spotted back at the guild. Suspicious, he asks if Noroa actually soloed the boss. Before our hero can figure out how to respond, Jinx jumps in and flexes their insane accomplishment. As Noroa tells his bootleg Barbie to stop her yammering, the bald man commends our protagonist on his insane achievement and asks how exactly he managed to destroy the S-rank monster as a G-rank noob. Completely speechless, our hero says that he sorta swung his sword as usual, but they don't buy it since the boss looks like it was crushed by Godzilla. Ignoring their shocked faces, Noroa takes the chance to make his way back to town. Once at the guild building, the receptionist greets him and immediately asks for his report, but he plays dumb and hopes she just lets it slide. Instead, the lady squints at him and asks if he's always rocked the budget cyborg aesthetic when trying to confirm his identity. Panicking, Noroa dodges the question by claiming it's his special dungeon diver cosplay he wears for fun. The receptionist decides not to question it further and moves on, reminding him that there's no need for a report since he was only supposed to scout the dungeon entrance as promised. But our guy replies in the most nonchalant way possible that he wiped out the entire dungeon. Her tiny brain takes a while to process it, and she freezes after it hits her. Shaking her head, she gives our guy a harsh reality check that there's no way a G-rank scrub like him could solo a dungeon. Noroa slumps at the personal attack, but quickly slaps down a chunk of magic stone straight from the Spider Queen. After a few tense moments, she yeets herself into the back room and rushes out seconds later, bowing deeply in apology for doubting him. Watching her brain short-circuit in disbelief, Noroa plays it cool. She's still skeptical of him though, and entertains the idea that he might have looted the goods. Now stuck in a dilemma on how to clear his name, Noroa tries to come up with something. Before he can decide, a familiar voice backs him up. It is none other than the bald swordsman from earlier. He steps forward and confirms that Noroa isn't capping, explaining how his party found every trap and monster completely obliterated long before they reached the boss room. He spreads word among the adventurers about the rising underdog, who apparently soloed an S-rank dungeon. Meanwhile, the bald dude smirks at Noroa and teases him that this is payback for their last little run-in. Fully convinced, the receptionist makes it official and declares that she recognizes our hero, even granting Noroa the Zero a promotion to S-rank. His brain short-circuits at the news, struggling to process how the promotion of a lifetime just fell into his lap. 2 weeks later, the scene shifts to our duo feasting in a high-end restaurant, where Noroa starts noticing how people whisper about him wherever he goes. The attention feels suffocating, and they even demand autographs since he's one of the few S-rank adventurers in the world. Pushing the thought aside, he turns to Jinx and says that it's time to gear up for their next adventure. Noroa shares that he has no choice but to use his cursed eye, which slightly concerns Jinx, but he clarifies that he'll make sure to keep the search radius to a minimum. As he activates the compass to search in 100 meters, it finds nothing, so our protagonist continues increasing the range till it's a whole kilometer. Seeing how excited our hero is, Jinx practically vibrates with anticipation as she tells him to spit out where it is already. But Noroa's heart nearly stops as he looks up and realizes that his target is a freaking dragon. The moment Jinx mutters the words he dreads, reminding him that he now has only 7 days to take it down, she says a prayer for him, while our hero launches into action. The dragon soaring above actually comes from the Holy Sun City, where the afternoon had been peaceful. That is, until the bishop, who raised Saintess Silula like her own daughter, nearly faints at the sight of the girl suddenly morphing into a colossal dragon that crushes the church and everything nearby. None of the church staff can wrap their heads around it, so they assume the dragon must have abducted the Holy Lady before vanishing into the sky. By pure chance, Noroa spots it mid-flight using his cursed eye. Back in the present, after braving harsh landscapes, our protagonist reaches the enchanted forest, infamous for the deadly beasts prowling within. While he braces himself, Jinx gets thrilled, so Noroa tells the irritating midget to at least pretend she cares. He reminds her that if he bites the dust, she's getting left behind, but she just gives him a pat on the back and reassures him that it'll all work out. Venturing deeper into the forest, he feels the dragon's aura growing stronger. He recalls the reports describing the beast that attacked Holy Sun City as a snow-white dragon that supposedly kidnapped the Saintess. On top of that, the creature has built its nest in the heart of the forest, meaning the cursed equipment should be there since male dragons have an obsession with hoarding anything that sparkles. Jinx lays out the plan. All he has to do is slip in, grab what he needs, and make it out alive because a single hit would flatten him. Right after that, just as Noroa prays he won't run into the dragon, his jaw nearly unhinges as the beast materializes right in front of him. Our guy ducks behind a tree, sizing up the dragon that casually wrecked a church like it was a sandcastle, racking his brain for a game plan. But before he can even start, a pack of bratty goblins appears out of nowhere and starts harassing the massive white dragon that looks squishier than a lizard now. Hearing the dragon pleading for them to stop, Noroa's brain short-circuits since monsters aren't supposed to talk like Digimon. Completely thrown off, he shifts his focus back to locating the cursed equipment, but the dragon's desperate cries and loud sobbing cut off that thought. Jinx, now rethinking their no-fight approach, casually suggests they might as well try some dragon meat. However, Noroa figures that negotiating with the dragon might be an option, especially since it likely has more intelligence than his obnoxious sidekick. That's when he gets an idea and decides to test his theory about the bloodliquor. It seems that closing his eyes while unsheathing the cursed sword keeps him from losing his sanity. With a light tap of the blade against the ground, a shockwave erupts and launches the little goblins into the air like ragdolls, even nearly blasting Jinx away with them. With the pests taken care of, he approaches the trembling dragon and reassures her that she's safe now. The massive lady hesitates, then peeks around before breaking into tears, repeatedly thanking him like he just saved her from a horror movie villain. Acting like some awkward high school girl, she admits that she's not great with other monsters. Noroa, deciding to ignore the weirdness, introduces himself, and Jinx follows. But the moment the giant lady spots the tiny menace, she nearly ascends to the afterlife after mistaking her for another weird monster. After Jinx finishes having her fun at the dragon's expense, Noroa finally gets to the point and asks where she stashes her treasure. Looking at her clueless face, it suddenly hits our protagonist that only male dragons hoard treasure. He casually strolls around her, trying to sneak a peek under the hood, but the giant lady responds appropriately by yeeting him into another dimension with a single tail smack. After crash landing headfirst, our guy unironically asks why she hit him when he was just checking her out. That question flips her switch, and she fumes, reminding him that just because she isn't human doesn't mean it's okay to cop a feel. She then sulks like he just signed her up for a ditty party. Shaking off the pain, Noroa shifts his focus back to the actual life-threatening issue. He narrows his eyes, trying to figure out why the cursed compass suddenly changed direction. A sinking feeling settles in as he realizes the eye isn't pointing at some hidden treasure, it's locked straight onto the pouting dragon in front of him. Strolling up to her like nothing ever happened, he casually asks if she happens to be using any cursed equipment. The question catches her completely off guard, and she adamantly denies it. But Noroa isn't buying it and activates his trap card, unleashing Jinx to scare her into revealing that the flower accessory that she's currently wearing might just be what he's looking for. The second Noroa's cursed eye locks onto the delicate ornament, it shuts off on its own. Jinx explodes with joy, cheering over the fact that he wouldn't die alone in the middle of nowhere. But our hero ignores her as he's too busy pouring out Shakespeare-tier poetry about the artifact's marvelous beauty. Once the high wears off, he realizes that all that's left is negotiating the equipment off the dragon, and his job here is done. That's when it hits him, and he asks why a dragon is wearing something made for humans. Without missing a beat, she casually drops the bombshell that she's actually human. Completely dumbfounded, our duo stares at her and lets out a synchronized ha till the dragon lady properly introduces herself as Silula the Saintess. As she recalls her story, the scene shifts to a banquet she once attended. Guests surround her, offering flowers and admiring her beauty, filling the hall with warmth and praise. Suddenly, the Lady Bishop arrives and reminds her that as a saintess, she must uphold proper conduct and stop tending to each person individually. Finding the bishop too serious, Silula tries to lighten the mood by asking her to use the familiar nickname Silu as she once did. The bishop, however, remains strict and warns her that if she fails to fulfill her duties properly, a big bad dragon will come to take her away. For Silula, receiving such a prestigious title feels no different from being a mere figurehead, and she understands that she must work harder to truly excel. As she approaches a table, her eyes catch a beautiful hairpin resting on its surface, making her wonder who could have left behind something so delicate and pretty. She questions whether becoming more beautiful is all that truly matters to her and, with that thought, picks up the hairpin. The instant she touches it, a soul contract takes hold, though she brushes it off as nothing more than an annoying but temporary ailment. Unaware that she has transformed into a dragon, she steps into the main hall, only to find everyone staring at her in terror. Confused, she watches as the crowd panics, shouting in fear over how a talking dragon has appeared among them. Realizing what has happened, she wastes no time and soars through the ceiling, escaping high into the sky. Meanwhile, when the guards inform the bishop that Silula is nowhere to be found, the lady, suspecting that the dragon has kidnapped the saintess, immediately issues an extermination quest. With this, the scene returns to the present. Noroa remarks that he would never have guessed such a massive dragon had been a saintess all along and insists that he will use his cursed eye to confirm it for himself. Once he verifies the truth and assures her that he believes her story, the saintess bursts into tears, having no one else to confide in about her sorrow. In that moment, Naroa suddenly realizes that she is none other than the saintess of sunlight, Silula Tulake, a figure powerful enough to topple an entire kingdom. The weight of the situation hits him as he grasps the sheer disrespect he has shown by laying a hand on her. Naroa drops knees and asks for forgiveness, but the dragon waves it off, saying she already owes him in every way. She then asks if he can simply call her Silu. Naroa agrees right away, making Silu so happy that she digs a hole in the ground. They then argue about the rumors, with Silu pointing out how people think she was kidnapped, while Naroa focuses on how a cursed hairpin ended up on her table. Knowing she might turn back into a human once the equipment is removed, Naroa asks her to share the stats of the cursed item. Silula explains that the cursed SSS ranked equipment, the Rose and the Beast, has the ability to trigger metamorphosis, forcing the user to take the form they fear the most. The only way to undo the transformation is by receiving a kiss from a true lover. Hearing this, Jinx and Naroa agree that the condition is ridiculously troublesome. Naroa points out that something like this is impossible for him, having never learned what it even means to love someone. For him, the word might as well not exist. The only thing he can imagine loving is his equipment. As he clenches his hand, the Saintess Dragon hesitantly asks if the equipment is really that dangerous. Naroa and Jinx try to calm her down, assuring her that it's just a bit troublesome at most. But now that he knows the hairpin is also a piece of equipment, Naroa finds himself growing eager. Apologizing to the dragon, he tells her that while he might not be able to undo her curse just yet, he guarantees his help. Jinx quietly whispers in his ear, warning him not to get involved as people might catch on that he's collecting cursed equipment. But Naroa, unknowingly being the simp of the year, argues that he can't just stand by while a lady's life is being turned upside down. Jinx lets out a deep sigh while Naroa turns to the dragon, suggesting that they should leave immediately since the hunting party is already on its way. He explains that while searching for her, he overheard that the bishop has gathered a large team to eliminate her, and convincing them that the dragon is actually Silu would be nearly impossible since they might attack her on sight. Silu trembles with anxiety upon realizing that her own people want her dead, but Naroa reassures her with a pat, vowing to protect her no matter what. On the surface, it sounds like a noble promise, but in reality, his reasons are far from pure. Turns out, our boy is less of a hero and more of a walking insurance policy for cursed gear. He's not exactly losing sleep over Silu's fate, but what actually concerns him most is that if the dragon dies, the cursed equipment might end up in the trash. A sudden loud noise startles Naroa, making him panic as he wonders if the army has already caught up to them. But when he glances at Silu, he finds her looking embarrassed as the sound had come from her stomach because of hunger. As the scene shifts, Naroa searches for edible monsters and soon stumbles upon two creatures locked in a fierce brawl. Without hesitation, he unsheathes his blade and slashes through them, taking down the ranked monsters in an instant. Remembering what Silula had told him, he realizes she must not have eaten in days. Using his cursed eye, he scans the area for any more edible monsters nearby. Seeing the manticore and bicorn taken down so effortlessly, Silu looks at Naroa in disbelief and asks who he really is. Naroa brushes it off, claiming he just got lucky since the monsters were already fighting each other. But deep down he knows the truth. His blade is simply too powerful even when he tries to hold back. After the monsters are slain, Naroa rinses the meat and cleans it up in a river nearby. He then shows off his chef skills, preparing a spicy buttered dish and serving it to Silu and Jinx. Just as he finishes, he suddenly remembers that Silu dislikes monsters and might not enjoy the meal. But hunger wins over hesitation, and she digs in, only to find the taste unbelievably good. She quickly fills her tummy, tears of joy welling up in her eyes as she starts commenting on the dish as if possessed by the spirit of a world-class food critic. Meanwhile, our doll lady is busy munching on the manticore tail, commenting that it tastes just like crayfish. Watching them enjoy the meal, Naroa smiles, remembering how he picked up outdoor cooking during his G-rank days when such skills were a matter of survival. He asks if they want seconds, making them even happier. Once they finish eating, he mentions that he has scattered the monster's blood and bones around, which should keep weaker creatures away so they can rest undisturbed. Silu, however, argues that she could never feel comfortable sleeping near a man and demands that he not look at her while she sleeps. Before they can sleep, Jinx suggests having a girl talk with the Saintess and asks if she has a lover. Silu confidently claims to have thousands and insists she could get more if she wanted. Hearing this, Noroa starts to think this might be a side of her he was better off not knowing. He then asks why she doesn't just ask one of them to kiss her and break the curse. At this, Silu's face turns red as she argues that she would have to get married first and doesn't know anyone good enough for that. Jinx questions if she even understands what a lover is, explaining that it means someone she truly gets along with. Silu, being an oblivious Barbie doll, gives it some thought before finally announcing that she really loves a lady, indicating towards the bishop. However, hearing this, Noroa gets an idea of what they should do next. Silu then admits that the only thing she ever had was her looks, and now that she has lost that, she believes everyone will hate her. Seeing her anxious, Noroa asks if she still loves the people of the Sun Pool. When she nods, he becomes determined to help her, remembering the only people who ever cared for him when he needed it most. With that resolve, he reaches out his hand to the dragon, vowing to find a way for her. To help the Saintess regain her humanity, our duo rides on her back at full speed toward the holy city of Sunpool. Soaring through the sky, the dragon lady asks Noroa once again if she'll really turn back to normal just by kissing someone. He reassures her that the curse doesn't explicitly state that the love should be romantic. Since practically everyone in Sunpool loves Silula, a quick smooch should do the trick. As they near their destination, our hero is amazed that she managed to turn what should have been a week-long journey into barely half a day. Meanwhile, Jinx suddenly starts feeling sick, making Silu frantically beg her not to throw up mid-flight. But the little doll, barely keeping it together, argues that a fine lady like her never pukes. Just as Noroa tells her to hold on a little longer, a magic circle beneath them activates, and a rain of icicles is unleashed. After managing to escape unharmed, Noroa looks closer at the source and spots an army of soldiers sent to track down and hunt Silula. Their appearance so far from the city is a good sign, as it likely means the city's defenses are spread thin. However, that's when our so-called refined lady caves in and unleashes a horror all over the soldiers below. Moving on, Noroa takes note of their strategy, realizing that these soldiers are using ice magic against a dragon since cold-blooded creatures become easy targets once their body temperature drops too low. Though the speed at which this dragon hunting force was assembled makes it clear that this attack might have been premeditated. Struggling against both the cold and the eye-watering stench of Noroa's socks, Silula wishes she could just turn back but pushes forward at full speed toward the city. As they approach the outskirts, Noroa advises they tread carefully, but patience isn't exactly in Silula's vocabulary and she charges in headfirst. While crying for everyone to hear her story, she's completely unaware of how terrifying a dragon hovering a few meters overhead looks. The crowd erupts into chaos, with people screaming that the dragon who took their beloved Saintess has returned to wreak more havoc. Seeing her own people tremble in fear, treating her like a mindless beast, Silula nearly breaks down. But before she loses herself, Noroa the part-time therapist tells her to breathe and address them like she always has. Regaining her composure in an instant, Silula loudly declares that she really is who they think she is. She explains that her transformation is the result of a cursed artifact, which can be undone if a loved one gives her a little smooch and asks them to help. But instead of relief, she's met with cold and suspicious glares, and the uneasy silence finally disappears when she notices someone familiar, the bishop. The old woman who raised Silula like her own daughter is frozen, staring in sheer horror at what the Saintess has become. Even so, Silula calls out to her for help in breaking the curse. The old lady remains silent, deep in thought, before her lips slowly curl into a warm smile, making Noroa believe their mission is finally over. But in the next instant, ice-cold chains snap around Silula's massive body, pinning her to the ground with crushing force. The so-called loving bishop turns to the citizens and commands them not to just stand there like fools. She declares that the great bishop herself will restrain the beast that swallowed their Saintess whole, stealing her voice and trapping her in its gut. The weight of betrayal slams into Silula like a truck as she gives them the order to unload their ice magic on her without mercy. Noroa quickly pieces it all together that the absurdly well-prepared troops armed with high-ranking ice magic at every turn weren't just a coincidence. The scheming old hag had planned this from the very beginning, right after she planted the cursed artifact in Silula's room. Both Silula and the bishop stare at him like he's spewing nonsense, but Jinx backs him up and calls the saggy bag of bones for being one heck of a mastermind. Everything starts falling into place, from the perfectly timed ice magic soldiers always ready to take down a dragon to the way the bishop manipulated Silula's deep trust, brainwashing her to fear dragons above all else. Naroa exposes the bishop's entire plot, but instead of getting angry, Silula asks her if this is all just a huge misunderstanding. Maybe the bishop really thought she was an actual dragon and attacked her out of fear. The old lady goes silent when she asks for a reason, because it doesn't really make sense that she'd pull such an elaborate scheme just to get rid of the saintess. Even though the soldiers request the old woman to fall back, she slowly advances towards Silula. Leaning in close, she finally gives her daughter a brutal reality check and confesses that she's always despised Silula. Watching everyone shower the saintess with love and praise while her own efforts in raising her went unnoticed was unbearable. The bishop blames Silula for the heinous crime of stealing her clout and making her look like an NPC with her pretty little face. Looking like Silula just drop-kicked her grandkids, the old woman asks if Silula finally understands her pain. With that, she casually walks away as the soldiers get ready to attack. When the bishop orders them to leave no trace behind, they summon a storm of diamond dust that engulfs the trio. Naroa can't help but be impressed by how strong Silula is as she shields them from the magical onslaught, even after the emotional damage. However, with her body temperature dropping faster than Logan Paul's credibility after Cryptozoo, she won't last much longer. Jinx screams at Naroa to do something before Silula collapses, but before he can come up with a plan, the crowd starts stoning the trio, which sends Naroa the serious realization that the condition of the curse and the beast doesn't just give free power with a cool transformation like he thought. Even something as simple as appearance can bring out the worst in people, and the only cure for that is love. While Naroa doesn't claim to know much about love, it's obvious now that the curse wasn't just meant to transform someone, but was designed to erase their very ability to be loved. Seeing how quickly devotion turned into hate, our boy decides Silula has had enough and deserves better. With that, he unsheathes his sword, launching himself into the air before slamming it into the ground like Tanjiro on steroids. Jinx watches in shock at how brutally he goes in, but Naroa assures her that he totally held back, at least enough not to end the lowlifes. As the soldiers struggle to recover from the shockwave, Naroa turns to Silula and tells her there's no reason to stay here any longer. He apologizes for failing to keep his promise. Just as our saintess slowly comes out of her shell, the frustrated wrinkly beanbag emerges from the rubble and casts ice magic on her. The old lady desperately yells at her soldiers to stop slacking and take down the dragon while it's still weak. This makes Silula snap, and she tells Naroa to hold her beer as she menacingly looms over the manipulative attention-thirsty grandma and makes her nearly pee herself. The old hag spews a whole lot of hateful nonsense, but Silula shuts her up with the most unexpected move, a cuddly hug attack, making everyone freeze in shock at the plot twist. Everyone stares in a daze while Naroa stops the knights from rushing in to rescue the bishop. Silu cries, overwhelmed by the pain she has caused her adopted mother. Her tears and heartfelt words move everyone, making them question if she truly is their saintess. Naroa stands frozen, unable to believe that Silula, despite all the hatred, still holds such a pure heart. Doubt spreads through the crowd about the old hag's accusation. Before the bishop can defend herself, Silu apologizes and swears never to return. With sorrow in her eyes, she tells Naroa that it is time to go, and the party takes off on her back. Forced to leave her beloved hometown, Silula glances back one last time at the place she cherished. Later that day, Naroa realizes Silula isn't in the best state and asks her to land. She does, though not without a spectacular crash. After Naroa and Jinx recover from the painful impact, our saintess finally admits she isn't holding up well. Tears fill her eyes as she regrets how Naroa's plan to let her kiss her loved ones failed, especially now that she understands she never truly loved them. Her only role was to keep them loyal to the church, and it finally hits her that she has no one left. Reality slams into our hero like a truck when he realizes that one of his beloved cursed items was the final push that sent her straight to rock bottom. Hoping to make up for it, Naroa asks if she wants to join him on his journey for cursed equipment, assuring her that no one will judge since he's a bloody NPC nobody cares about. He suggests she stick around until she finds someone she truly loves. When she asks why he's being so kind, our hero says he can't stand to see a lady suffer, especially now that she's a loner like him, but also because she has the purest heart he's ever known. With a gentle smile, Naroa adds that without her human form, he can finally see her heart of gold and accept her for who she is. Hearing this, she tears up and lands a smooch right on Noroa's grease-coated face. Silula cheerfully tells him she's already found the one she loves, leaving our virgin completely speechless and blushing like a maiden in love. Noroa realizes that his theory about the curse was true and that love doesn't specifically need to be romantic. But his thoughts are cut short by our saintess shyly giggling to herself that she's gonna be his baby mama after 9 months. She starts teasing him about taking responsibility and casually declares that she'll be by his side until death do them part. Watching those two commit the filthy crime of holding hands in public makes Jinx hurl in disgust. 3 days later, our hero arrives in a town far from the Holy Sun City, hunting for his next dungeon. But at the guild, all eyes are on him, not because of his Chadley aura, but because of the breathtaking beauty sprinting toward him with a freshly printed adventurer's license, shyly muttering that she'd like Noroa to use her however he likes. No matter where she goes, she can't help but steal the spotlight. Hopefully, no one realizes she's a saintess, or his reputation as the creepy doll dude might stain her public image. Jinx yanks Noroa's ear, snapping him out of his daze, and tells him to stop drooling and get moving if they're done here. Seeing this, Silula rushes over to defend him from the tiny menace. But Jinx just smirks and teases her for not even knowing that our boy is a full-blown masochist. Not wanting to be left behind, Silula pinches his cheeks to assert dominance as best girl. She ignores his protests and teases that he was born to be her obedient little sub. Seeing things get out of hand way too fast, Jinx walks off while calling her a pervert. The scene shifts to the trio making their way through a dense forest. Once they put enough distance from town, Silula locks in and poofs into a dragon again, giggling over how the transformation now takes just 10 seconds after all their practice. With the power to shift at will, she could breathe fire and soar through the sky, though Noroa sulks a little, wishing the whole kissing a loved one condition still mattered. After a short transformation drill, Noroa hops onto Silula's back, enjoying the refreshing flight while Jinx barely stops herself from hurling. Silula chuckles, pointing out how cute Jinx looks all curled up inside Noroa's hoodie. But the wholesome moment crashes and burns when the creepy little doll starts loudly dreaming about guzzling his earwax. This makes Silula wish the nasty little gremlin stays in hibernation mode permanently. Shaking off her horror, Silula switches topics and asks why they're heading to the county of Emdo. He shares that his cursed eye has discovered the next cursed equipment there, but also because that county is the ultimate paradise for sad losers like him who drool over equipment than actual women. Silula gives him a moment of silence for his non-stop ramblings about how all the legendary gear comes from there, struggling to act like she cares while Noroa geeks off the rails. Once our protagonist finally shuts his trap, he thanks the lady for flying him to his promised Neverland, but their journey suddenly halts when they spot something strange in the forest. Noroa swears he just saw something and hopes his target is somewhere in the woods since his compass doesn't exactly tell him if it's underground. Right then, Silula catches sight of a group of knights guarding a toppled carriage. Noroa assumes they're from the county, while Jinx, freshly awake and confused, earns a warning to keep her hands to herself and not act out her weird, deranged dreams. That makes her question if he's really the little virgin she picked up off the streets, and the two bicker until Silula steps in, reminding them that the knights need their help. Out of nowhere, they spot a creepy smiley creature with monstrous eyes and jagged teeth behind one of the knights. The knight barely avoids getting turned into minced meat, dodging just in time before retreating from the camouflaged beast. Our hero is stunned at how quickly the monster vanishes after striking, while Silula guesses it might be the ranked beast known as the Tertellian. These sneaky creatures specialize in ambushing their prey, and their only exposed weak spots are the eyes and mouth, while the rest of their body is covered in nearly indestructible scales. To make things worse, the scales are rock solid, and only the knight captain seems to have an rank sword that won't snap against them like a twig. Wasting no time, Noroa turns to his dragon lady and declares that it's hero time. Meanwhile, the knight leader stands on high alert, bracing for the Tertellian's next move. Silula crash lands harder than the Twin Towers. Everyone turns to our party, eyeing them with suspicion, but our hero puffs out his chest and proudly announces that he's here to save the day. The knight captain, however, shuts him down without hesitation, questioning how a loser built like dry spaghetti could possibly slay a beast he can't even see. Unfazed, Noroa activates his cheat skill and his compass eye locks onto the monster that is hiding like a little hobbit right behind two clueless knights. Noroa declares his victory the moment he locks onto his target and orders the knights to clear the way. Facing the ugly chimera head-on, our boy shuts his eyes and goes full Zorro mode, slicing the oversized turtle into a clean two-piece meal. The impact booms through the forest, leaving a crater so massive that Jinx casually wonders if he just erased the spot from Google Maps. After checking if his sword leveled up, our protagonist turns to the Knight Captain and asks if she's alright. She assures him that her wounds are nothing, but her men have taken much worse. Quickly realizing she forgot to introduce herself, she removes her helmet and reveals that she's a stunning beauty named Syrah Letelier. Noroa's jaw nearly hits the floor seeing that the captain of the world-renowned knights is such a pasty woman, and follows by introducing himself back. As always, Jinx makes a loud impression, leaving Syrah questioning her sanity when the supposedly inanimate object speaks up and humbly brags that her slave is an S-rank adventurer. Pushing that aside, Syrah acknowledged Noroa's strength and asks if he's even human, because a dragon that huge would never take orders from some weak, musty nobody like him. Especially when her men can barely tame small wyverns. Our hero prays that Scylla keeps her mouth shut and doesn't start getting all flustered, since even tame dragons don't talk, even though she's already looking pretty sus standing on all fours while Syrah gives her a pat down. When the knight curiously asks why the dragon is so obedient, Noroa smirks and claims he showered the good girl with plenty of love, which sends our saintess's mind straight into the gutter, and before she even realizes it, Scylla mumbles that she wouldn't mind calling him daddy. After an awkward silence settles in, the two try their best to make Syrah think that she's high and the dragon totally didn't talk or anything. Noroa then changes the subject and asks what the Knights of Indo are doing so far out. Syrah explains that this was just a small hiccup and that their actual objective lies deep within the forest. Seeing Noroa's confusion, the Knight Captain clarifies that her mission is to wipe out the clandestine Gear Society, a gang of lunatics who completely lost it after messing around with cursed equipment. Once Noroa confirms that the target is in the forest, his suspicion is confirmed that the gang has his target. Seeing the knights have suffered heavy losses, Noroa suggests they fall back, but Syrah insists the gang has been wreaking havoc in the city and can't be ignored anymore. Noroa watches as Syrah yaps about how she can't delay the operation and curses herself for being even more useless than Sakura to her mistress before outright declaring her hate of cursed equipment. Tired of seeing her flounder, Noroa feels a pang of sympathy, realizing that the cursed equipment he cherishes has caused someone pain. After brushing off Jinx's crass attempt to lighten the mood with a joke about his earwax smelling nastier than his socks, Noroa offers to join the operation. Syrah is taken aback, and with Jinx and Scylla chiming in, the Knight Captain gladly welcomes them aboard. Noroa knows that if the lady notices his cursed sword, especially if he annihilates the enemy too easily, it would raise suspicion, so blending in with the knights is a safer bet. The scene shifts to the clandestine society's stronghold deep in the forest, which Scylla finds far too advanced for a ragtag group. Syrah hands Noroa a potion, thanking him once again. Just then, a knight approaches her to inform them that they're ready to move in. Scylla, showing her readiness, lets out a cute roar. Syrah, with a serious look, tells Noroa that she's relying on him, the S-class adventurer. With that, he advances toward the fortress first, knowing the knights are too battered to fight back if the enemy uses the walls to their advantage. With a single massive slash, Noroa tears through the towering wall, creating an opening for Syrah to charge in with her troops. His attention shifts to the Knight Lady, who is tearing through enemies with ease, thanks to her ranked whip, 9 Tails. Noroa practically foams at the mouth over a freaking whip until Scylla smacks some sense back into him. Jinx quickly reminds him to stay focused on securing the cursed equipment, prompting the party to head toward their target. They soon arrive at a rundown tower, but since Scylla can't exactly squeeze in because of her sheer chonk, Noroa leaves her to keep watch outside. Stepping into the warehouse, he finds himself in what looks like paradise, a space packed to the roof with gear. As Noroa drools over the pile of gear, a short, pudgy man frantically asks if he's with the knights. The boss instantly exposes himself by wondering who snitched, then dares Noroa to guess what's inside his trunk. Noroa casually calls it cursed equipment, leaving the boss shaken before he quickly fires back, daring him to guess why he won't let it go. Of course, Noroa curses the boss for holding the equipment hostage and mocks that he's got about as much heart as he's got hair, which is none. The fuming goon insists that he'll be the one to touch the equipment, but Noroa dares him, completely shattering his toughest attempt at playing the villain, especially since he seems more excited about his first hostage negotiation than actually being intimidating. The boss claims he isn't afraid since he's already doomed, but Noroa, growing tired of the nonsense, signals Jinx that it's her time to shine. Our boy gets ready to snatch the equipment the moment the old man puts it on, all while the boss keeps throwing empty threats. On top of that, Noroa can't help but get hyped since the cursed equipment turns out to be a cool sword and shield. Snapping him out of it, Jinx tells Noroa to get ready to poke her with his needle. But the greasy midget hits him with an Uno reverse and laughs that his genius scheme was actually to throw the equipment at him. Baldy starts laughing like a maniac while waiting for our protagonist to meet a painful end. But instead, he is welcomed by two little girls. As the boss's jaw nearly hits the floor, the little girls introduce themselves as Sly and Me, playfully performing an intro sequence that reveals they combined to form slime. Noroa smirks at the bald man, amused by the idea that these seemingly innocent girls are the horrors he had to deal with. The panicked fatty immediately wants to make a run for it, but the twins instantly shapeshift into anything Noroa imagines, including a paper fan. Without hesitation, our boy sends the fat man flying straight through the wall until he crashes into a nearby tower. Believing the worst is finally over, Noroa gives the twins a few pats for their help. But just as relief settles in, he notices something off and suddenly collapses to the ground. His mind races, suspecting the old man at first, but the real problem becomes clear when he realizes that each twin continuously drains 0.5% of his health every second. Noroa forces his rusty brain into overdrive, and a quick calculation confirms he is doomed in 100 seconds. Desperation kicks in as he rushes to grab a potion from his bag, but before he can act, the three ladies panic over their hero collapsing. In the chaos, the life-saving potion slips from his grasp and spills across the floor. Our hero's mind drifts to a buried memory of himself in a lab where he can barely make out the conversation happening outside. It's a dream Noroa knows all too well, always playing out the same way with a familiar woman saying she has to leave and hoping that he'll help her when they meet again. No matter how many times he relives it, it always ends with him swearing to save the lady whose name he can't even recall. The scene then shifts to his childhood when he was trapped under rubble, only to be rescued by an equipment owner who later became his father figure. Watching his past self inside the man's shop, an uneasy feeling gnaws at him until the woman from his dreams breaks the silence and asks our hero how long he plans to keep messing around. Her voice calls his name again and again until Noroa jolts awake in a king-size bed that looks way too luxurious for our broke bum with no money. As he scans the room, his eyes land on Jinx, flipping through her list of wake-up methods, which apparently includes stuffing his nose with wasabi enough to make his soul leave his body. The little gremlin jumps in surprise when he finally stirs, but instead of her usual clingy greeting, she gives him the cold shoulder. Instead, Cilula asserts her dominance and throws herself at Noroa with a tight hug, her face burning red as she celebrates his return to consciousness. Watching her hoard him like a clingy girlfriend, Jinx gets jealous and also jumps in. Feeling suffocated between the two, Noroa fights to shove them off. After he asks how long he's been out, they tell him it's been nearly a whole day, and he's made them worry sick. He flashes them a grateful smile while both girls blush, though Jinx acts like she totally didn't care or spend the entire night holding his hand. Hearing sends Noroa's memories flooding back, and he remembers the moment he collapsed mid-fight as the cursed equipment drained his life to the point where he should have been dead ages ago. Realizing that no miracle conveniently saved him, our protagonist asks how they managed to keep him alive. Jinx explains that they force-fed him health potions like he was in a Fortnite chug-jug marathon until a knight handed over a special item that's keeping the curse at bay for now. After that, they kept him on a never-ending potion drip just to keep him from passing out. Cilula giggles, admitting that squeezing inside in dragon form was a nightmare, so she had to steal a non-consensual kiss to change back. Not that Noroa is complaining. He then asks the real question in his mind about where they even are. Cilula answers that Sarah hooked them up with a room in the Mdo County mansion, which explains why everything is so darn fancy. Jinx follows up with a shameless demand for him to also buy a mansion worthy of her stature, but Noroa tells her to quit nagging like a gold digger and calls over the twins. The tiny lowly duo timidly peeks out from behind the saintess, but she reassures them that Noroa isn't the type to bite, even if he looks pretty creepy whenever he sees cursed equipment. Hearing this, the twins quickly lower their heads and apologize in a way that shows how sorry they feel. not one to hold grudges. Noroa pats their heads with his greasy Cheetos dust-coated hands and tells them there's nothing to be sorry for since they had no control over the curse. One twin looks completely thrown off by how fast he let it slide, while the other eyes him suspiciously, accusing him of faking his chill and secretly planning to dump all his pent-up frustration onto them later. Deciding they might as well accept their fate, the delusional pair suddenly crawls into Noroa's bed, sending him into sheer panic that his next bed might be inside in jail. To his absolute shock, they do nothing but curl up like two adorable stuffed animals. Though the warmth feels nice, Noroa still demands to know what exactly they're trying to pull. With pure innocence, they explain that Big Sister Jinx told them their master has a special weakness for extra small ladies. Over in the corner, Jinx nearly explodes with pride at her own god-tier mischief. After playing whack-a-mole with her head, Noroa radiates his virgin energy and tries to kick all the ladies out of his bed, flailing so hard that he even knocks over his entire potion stand. Just then, Syrah bursts into the room looking genuinely worried about him, only to find our hero in a questionable position worthy of a life sentence. So she yeets herself right out of the room while apologizing for disturbing his happy time. After explaining his little mishap and getting an apology out of her, Noroa digs his hole deeper by proudly claiming that he'd rather spend his happy time with a fine piece of armor than a real woman. The Knight Captain ignores his sus comment and confirms if he's feeling better with the healing potion. Noroa assures Syrah and thanks her for the favor, but she insists her debt to him is far greater, and even being friends with an S-rank Chad is big, no matter how strange he may be. Then, the lady nearly gives Noroa a heart attack by asking about his relationship with the girls sprawled across his lap. His brain shuts down as he struggles to explain that they aren't cursed equipment, which Syrah hates. To his surprise, Syrah says she already knows how he shielded them from the deadly poison and admits that his chivalry made her heart race. Noroa rolls with it, catching Jinx's wink that confirms she has his back. Syrah then explains that his bold feat even impressed the Count of Emdo, which is why he's free to crash at her mansion for as long as he wants. Right after that, a maid interrupts Syrah with news that Lady Leisha is asking for her. Syrah bids Noroa farewell and tells him to enjoy his time, which makes him wonder if something serious came up. Deciding to make good use of her hospitality, our protagonist tells Silula that the steady drips of health potions should buy him time to brainstorm a way out of Slime's curse condition. If he doesn't start showing signs of recovery, others might get suspicious and figure out the truth about the cursed duo. Moreover, Bloodlicker's thirst for the red stuff won't stop if he takes a break from slaying monsters, and it'll eventually take his life. Silula agrees that staying hooked up to a drip forever isn't a real solution, and after ignoring Jinx's usual dumb suggestions, Noroa asks the ladies to help him find a way out of his mess. Just then, a devilish grin spreads across Jinx's face as she reveals her big brain idea to fight fire with fire. It makes sense to Noroa since that approach has worked for him before, and he refuses to admit that there's any cursed equipment he can't master. Getting all pumped up, the ladies rush him to activate his compass eye, but Noroa tells them to calm their melons and reminds them that he's limited on time by how many potions he can take. After Jinx argues that there's no harm in searching within a small radius, Noroa grows a pair and orders his cursed eye to scan a 100-meter range. Grinning like a little demon, Jinx mocks him for being a coward and says he just proved his peasant mentality since that range is inside the giant mansion. But before he can argue, Noroa's eye suddenly locks onto something and he freezes in place. It seems his cursed eye has picked up a hit on a suspiciously close cursed equipment. Meanwhile, Syrah arrives at Lady Leisha's door, who apologizes for calling her over without prior notice. When Syrah comments on her habit of using fantasy stories as an escape, Lady Leisha snaps the book shut and changes the subject. Armed with a whip, Syrah then gets serious like something really bad is about to go down. On the other hand, Noroa notices that the artifact is closer than he expected, which doesn't make sense since this mansion belongs to a noble lady. Silula's face pales at the thought, and Jinx finds it suspicious since it's practically illegal to own such artifacts. Silula then jumps to the worst possible conclusion that Syrah and the rest might not be as innocent as they seem, and Noroa could end up on their hit list. That's why our hero finally summons the courage 2 days later to sneak out of his room in budget Rapunzel style, hoping to figure out who's using the cursed equipment. He asks Silula to cover for him, but the moment he leaves, he can hear her gushing over his greasy gamer smell, though he pretends not to notice. It turns out his rope was actually the twins transformed. With that out of the way, Noroa moves on to his main mission and heads toward the main building of the Endo mansion, confident that he'll have no trouble slipping past the guards since he's spent his entire life sneaking past monsters like a wuss. When he reaches a room with the light still on, he wonders how he'll get inside, knowing his potions will run out soon. Jinx suggests they at least take a peek before moving forward. The twins sandwich him from above and below, launching up like a rocket. This gives him a clear view through the window to a cursed scene of Lady Lesha getting her bumpers thrashed by Syrah. Our boy barely holds it together, watching a fine lady enjoy some fine lashes to her bottom and gushing each time Syrah roasts the non-existent dignity out of her. As Jinx questions why they're enjoying naughty time in the same room as the cursed equipment, the curious lolies start nagging Noroa to let them take a peek. He tells them there's nothing they want to see and decides to yeet himself out of there before he gets offed in his sleep for witnessing this madness. Before he can make his escape, though, Syrah rushes to the window and spots him. To his surprise, she acts pretty nonchalant and proudly introduces herself as the masked zombie mommy who dishes out justice to the backside in the dark hours. Just then, Lady Lesha also realizes Noroa is there, so his life is pretty much over now. Or so he thought. Instead, Lady Lesha casually apologizes for letting him see her naughty side, and the masked lady serves tea on the table like nothing messed up just took place on it. Lesha shares that she's quite pleased to have someone other than Syrah around for once, so Noroa introduces himself politely, followed by his lowly brigade. For some reason, Syrah joins in as well. Ignoring her cringy act, Lesha lets him know she's impressed by his conduct, but our hero couldn't care less as he scans the room, trying to figure out where the cursed equipment is. The moment his eyes land on Lesha's choker, he smoothly caresses her neck and straight up tells her he's never seen such beauty in his life before, straight up calling her his soulmate, obviously talking about the girthy, big black collar wrapped around her neck. The masked lady instantly restrains Noroa before he can unload on Lesha and questions what dastardly deed he is planning to do to her innocent mistress. Do you think Noroa and his ever-growing harem can snatch that cursed collar off the naughty noble lady? Comment Jinx if you want a part 2 because you really don't want to miss what happens next. Don't forget to drop a like and subscribe if you enjoy these videos. As always, see you in the next one. Noah apologizes as he takes another look at the collar to confirm his suspicion. Gobbling on the biscuits with cheeks as puffy as Kirby, Jinx lets Noroa choose if he wants to take it by force. Even though deep down he really wants to, Noroa sees himself as a gentleman and doesn't want to hurt Lesha, especially if it means taking something she holds close. But Jinx couldn't care less, and as far as she's concerned, only Noroa could enjoy owning cursed items, so she calls Lady Lesha a pig, which she clearly loves, and orders her to answer Noroa's question. Not feeling great under the spotlight, he glances at the book Lesha has, and that sparks an idea, so he says he will help her out with her problem, while she just stares back with those soft innocent eyes. As he suspensefully waits for her to answer, Lady Lesha is delighted to know that he's willing to whoop that thing until she's satisfied. Jinx informs Noroa that chances like this to spank royal rears will never come back, but our hero turns her down, mostly because he believes a real gentleman avoids such things on a first date. Lesha then points out that Noroa could end up regretting his choice, and once the twins start paying attention, she jumps at the chance to teach them how to truly admire a solid smack across her royal bonnet. This whole situation gives Noroa a headache, so he wonders if removing the cursed item from her neck might solve the problem. Syrah freaks out because that detail was supposed to stay hidden. Right after that, Lesha's mood shifts fast, and Syrah reveals she found it by accident after opening a gift that had been meant for the knights, which proves how dirty enemies of nobles are. Syrah then reveals this is the reason Lesha hasn't stepped out of her room for a full 10 years. First, because wearing cursed gear in public would spark a massive scandal, and second, because the collar heals her HP right away whenever she takes damage, but it makes the pain 10 times worse. It quickly becomes clear that even a small accident could be fatal for her. Syrah continues, explaining that the bloody item also turned Lesha from a kind and intelligent lady into a filthy masochistic pig, which makes her explode with happy noises. And that doesn't come from the curse itself, but more from how getting hurt and healed right after unlocked something deep in her. So for 10 straight years, Syrah has been faithfully smacking her royal backside. And now, with tears in her eyes, she asks if he can even imagine how hard it is to keep hitting that butt every single night for 10 whole years. Noroa casually shrugs that it low-key ain't that bad, but Sira argues that she didn't sign up for this and curses the choker for making her life insufferable, explaining her deep hatred for cursed items. Lesha, who hasn't said anything for a bit, suddenly gets serious and admits that she has tried many times to remove it, proving she hasn't really enjoyed the whole thing as much as it may have seemed. With a confident smile, Naroa tells her there's no reason to stress and gives his word that he will lift the curse, which makes the noble lady turn red. He then asks the girls to shut their eyes because he plans to use a forbidden move and right away tosses Jinx off his shoulder. After one sharp poke with his needle, he tells them they're good to open their eyes. When they see the cursed nightmare vanish instantly, the girls light up with joy and hug each other to celebrate. Knowing it's time to bounce, Naroa quietly steps out and smiles to himself as he admires his shiny new choker. Feeling relieved that their master is no longer cursed, the twins wrap him up tight in a warm hug. With that, they set off once again on their journey to find another cursed item. However, the gang is unaware of the panic and chaos spreading in a nearby city as a behemoth worse than any natural disaster tears through the streets. Naroa finally wraps up the mess caused by the twin troublemakers Sly and Me, who have only recently entered his life, and while dealing with that chaos, he somehow ends up lending a hand to the lady as well. After 3 days go by, the Count of the mansion, wanting to show his gratitude for saving his daughter, arranges a lavish banquet right in the mansion's garden just to honor Naroa for everything he's done. Naroa appears pleased but can't help feeling a little uneasy since Lisha has now climbed onto his lap and shows no intention of getting off anytime soon. She blushes while calling our boy her prince and sweetly asks him to hand her the soup, which makes Naroa even more confused as he tries to make sense of her odd behavior, especially after all the drama that happened because of that cursed equipment. She asks our boy to look straight into her eyes and feed her the soup himself, but Naroa yells out in pure panic, trying to knock some sense into her since the soup is still steaming hot and could actually burn her face off. The noble lady, completely ignoring his concern, insists that she's always dreamed of a Prince Charming shoving a bowl of hot soup right into her face like some twisted fairy tale moment. Our poor guy feels completely defeated now because dealing with Lisha has become way too much ever since Sira left for that expedition. And just when he thinks it couldn't get worse, Cilula shows up looking like she wants to rip someone's head off, probably because Lesha is leeching onto her potential hubby. Aside from everything else going on, the mood takes a serious turn when Lesha's father walks over and sits right across from our boy, calmly introducing himself as Whitaker Lovespain. Even Naroa instantly recognizes the name since Whitaker happens to be a prestigious old geezer who commands the entire defense force of the kingdom, and just being in front of someone like that has our boy sweating bullets. The towering man expresses his gratitude to Naroa for saving his daughter, admitting that if it hadn't been for him, Lesha might have been locked up in her room for the rest of her life. He openly confesses that he sees himself as a failure of a father who couldn't deal with things properly and ended up shutting his own daughter away. Whitaker then kindly tells Naroa to sit back and enjoy the feast, proudly announcing that the entire celebration is being held in his honor. All these luxuries feel a bit overwhelming for a boy who has spent his entire life surviving in the slums, and just when he thinks the fancy treatment is finally over, the old geezer throws in more by offering to bless him with a reward. Whitaker lightly scolds his daughter to get off Naroa's lap so he can have a proper conversation with the boy. But Lesha seems way too obsessed with getting her back bumper warmed by Naroa and refuses to move. Her father turns back to Naroa and tells him to ask for anything he wants, though he really stresses the word work like he's trying to shove the idea into his head. The old man does his best to sell the pitch, explaining that finding a decent job these days is pretty much a miracle, and that having a solid position under someone like him could make Naroa well known across the entire kingdom. Naroa quickly picks up on the fact that the old man wants him to work under him, and while it would truly be an honor to serve someone of such high caliber, he knows he can't accept the offer since his goal is to travel the world in search of dark cursed equipment, something he just can't give up on. As Lesha starts blurting out something about offering herself as the reward, her father erupts like a volcano, yelling that she's the one thing he absolutely cannot hand over, and then immediately switches gears and starts guilt-tripping our boy into accepting the job anyway. Naroa, fully aware that nobles of this level won't let him leave without taking something, decides to put an end to this sheer madness by asking for a bit of monetary reward, explaining that he's currently flat broke and struggling to even fund his travels, especially after Jinx's curse totally obliterated any luck he had left to get anything useful. Just when it looks like the old geezer might finally let our boy go, he closes the distance between them and keeps pressuring him to accept the job, insisting that even Sira has personally recommended him for it. Noroa once again declines politely, and then tries to shift his focus toward the food, only to find that all the plates in front of him are already wiped clean. Jinx and the chaotic twins casually ask for second servings, and the old geezer claps his hands with joy, signaling the maids to bring in refills. But before they can even get moving, a soldier in complete disarray stumbles into the scene, leaning heavily on his comrades, and barely manages to speak as he reports to the Count that the cursed equipment has broken loose in the market of Torchmalina. He struggles to stay on his feet, barely able to speak as he explains that the incident is the work of the remnants of the clandestine Gear Society. Just as they were about to capture them, the Society members released the cursed equipment, and one person in the crowd started a rampage with it. Noroa immediately recalls his own experience with such a rampage, realizing just how devastating it could be. Being one of the largest cities in the region, Torchmania could face severe consequences from such an event, and he knows the chaos could spread far beyond anyone's control. Leisha finally climbs off Noroa's lap and rushes to the soldier, her worry clear as she urgently asks about Sira, hoping for some good news amidst the growing tension. The knight hesitates for a moment before responding and then mentions that the captain is doing everything in his power to stop the cursed equipment, which raises Noroa's suspicion. Noroa argues with the Count and points out that there's a high likelihood that Torchmalina will be destroyed if things continue at this pace. However, before he can say more, Leisha steps in and pleads with her father to send as many reinforcements as possible to save Sira. Whitaker looks defeated and admits that sending more reinforcements would only result in more casualties. He quickly gives the order to gather all the knights in the county and evacuate the city. When Lesha asks him if he's simply going to abandon the captain, the old helpless geezer asks for her forgiveness. Noroa believes that the Count's decision, though difficult, is for the best, and that they can't afford to lose hope. With this in mind, he steps forward and asks the Count if he can be of assistance. Jinx, however, argues with him, pointing out that this situation could be more dangerous than anything they've faced before, and they might not even make it in time. Noroa acknowledges her concern and then turns back to the Count, asking him to keep what he's about to do a secret, as a reward for his help instead of the money. With that, he transforms Silu into her dragon form and the twins into their weapon forms, promising to save the captain no matter what. A few hours earlier, during the final night in Torchmalina, Sira stands covered in blood, yet she manages a smile, trying to reassure her underlings that they can handle the situation. She orders her soldiers to escape and evacuate the city as quickly as possible. Just as she speaks, the chaos-causing creature grows even larger right before her eyes, launching a gluttonous attack on everyone. In the midst of the chaos, Sira's nine-tail whip equipment is seen falling onto the ground dripping with something that totally looks like ketchup on it. We then see a girl in a hood as she hides behind a rock from a massive black beast that devours everything it sees. While it passes, her mind flashes back to the moment Sira told her to run while she holds the creature off, which makes the girl tear up with guilt as she grips her nine tails. She believes it's her fault that the kind captain and all her men ended up as lunch for the gluttonous monster, since she is the one who let it loose. While she stays stuck in that thought spiral, the giant black creature finally notices her and drags its tongue across the ground as it prepares to enjoy its snack. She can only stare back in fear and pulls Sira's whip close while whispering how sorry she is when, out of nowhere, our hero swoops in on a dragon and grabs her right before the supersized chain chomp from Mario turns her into cheese. Up in the sky, the little girl looks confused and tries to make sense of what's going on while Noroa checks if she's alright. He says he's here to save her and thanks Silu for the wild save that saved both their lives with perfect timing. Watching the town reduced to ashes makes him feel down, but he's relieved he found someone who might help him track down the other survivors. Right then, Silula tells him to snap out of it because the massive chomper heads their way as they speak, and Noroa can't believe how huge it looks. He quickly tells Silu to flap with everything she's got, but the beast seems to close in faster and faster. Our hero also notices that his eye is reacting to it, which means the Humongosaur is actually a cursed item, and that throws him off since no one nearby seems to be controlling it. The beast snaps at Silu's puffy tail and barely misses, so Jinx tells her to move faster even though Silu struggles to stay in the air with that fat load on her back. When Noroa pulls out his sword, the girl claims there's no way he can handle the monster with just that. but he turns the slime twins into a crossbow and locks right onto it. The girl watches in shock as the massive creature charges in with its slimy tongue out, but Noroa fires his bolts straight at its face. The huge beast then dodges everything and seems untouchable like its Gojo, and stuns Noroa with its wild speed. Still, he keeps firing off endless slime bolts, which Chomper swallows like breakfast pancakes. Everyone stares in disbelief at what happened, and right as the monster goes in too much on them, he summons an extra-large slime shield that barely keeps Chomper's jaw open. Noroa slams the shield and knocks Chomper back, and then tells Silula to take off. Even from a distance, they notice Chomper still follows and clearly wants a bite of her, so Jinx decides their brief break is the perfect time for lunch, which annoys Noroa. After that, the girl quietly thanks him for the save, and Noroa asks about the whip she is holding. He says it belongs to a knight named Sura, and then stares at it so intensely that the girl flinches and quickly apologizes, saying the kind knight gave her life to protect her. Noroa doesn't know how to comfort her until Jinx jumps in and says she shouldn't feel guilty because the whole disaster is not her fault, and then blames the evil gang behind it all. But the girl admits she's wrong, because it was actually Sura who unleashed the cursed item, which leaves everyone in total shock. Noroa finds that hard to believe and asks her to explain, so she says she works as an equipment appraiser, and came along with the knights to help wipe out the gang that's been tearing everything apart. She admits that after the knights tied up every last criminal, one of the thugs suddenly jumped her, and she froze on the spot, which is when Sura stepped in to protect her. Sadly, the box the guy tossed held a cursed item, and that reminds Noroa of the same moment he had with the slime twins. She adds that the cursed item was way too strong, and the Night Lady pulled every move she had, but in the end, she still got eaten. With emotions building fast, Noroa gently tells her he would have done the exact same thing in her place, then assures her she doesn't need to stress because he's convinced Sura is still alive and holding on inside that monster. The girl doubts it, but he explains cursed items don't do anything on their own and need a user, so if the creature is still moving, that means Sura must be alive, which also means he just has to rescue her and everyone else stuck in its belly. Noticing the confident look on his face, Jinx easily picks up that he plans to snatch the equipment for himself, though pulling that off means getting a little too dangerously close. Since he needs to be at least within 10 meters to hijack someone's cursed gear, he tells Silula to get the girl somewhere safe, and then casually adds that he's about to take a quick dive. Watching him throw himself into danger just like Sura once did, the teary-eyed girl panics and begs him to let her be the one to make the sacrifice instead. Hearing that, Jinx shrugs and says her bold attitude reminds her of someone familiar, clearly throwing shade at Noroa. But he just sighs and tells her he has no plans to go down and already has a full strategy cooked up. With that, he eats himself off the dragon while noting that the girl seems an awful lot like him back when he was Noroa the Zero. After he pulls off a superhero landing, he also finds the scenery eerily reminiscent of the day when it all began, though something feels different now because he no longer feels satisfied with fading into the mist like some wet rag NPC. As the humongous Chomper wiggles its way toward him roaring, the thought of everyone he loves flashes through his mind, and our hero stays unfazed as he locks his sword with Chomper like a boss. Noroa quickly moves in, trying to create an opening for Jinx so she can jab the needle and hijack the equipment, something that should have been pretty straightforward, but for some reason, he finds himself struggling way more than expected. He pushes hard, giving it everything he's got, but the gluttonous monster refuses to show even the slightest gap he can use. The creature then lunges straight at our boy, forcing him to make a run for it as fast as he can. While dodging, Noroa thinks back to his plan and realizes just how risky it is to leave everything to Jinx, knowing she needs a few seconds to activate her ability, and having her handle that alone might turn out to be a huge mistake. He's already stuck in a pretty awful position, and even one slip up here could land him straight inside the tummy of the big bad monster. Jinx then suggests that our boy throw up a barrier over them using the slime shield, thinking it might buy just enough time for her ability to activate, though Noroa doesn't seem too thrilled with that plan since he's pretty sure they'll get eaten along with their so-called shield, and once they're inside, he has no clue what kind of nightmare that would be. Right then, Noroa decides to ditch the defensive plan altogether and instead flips the strategy to full offense. He quickly takes the slime shield and reshapes it into a cage, trapping the big bad monster inside, thinking he's finally nailed it this time. Without wasting a second, he yells at Jinx to prep the needle. But just as she's about to, the monster pulls a fast one and disappears underground by digging out a hole right beneath itself. Noroa starts wondering if the gluttonous monster has caught on to their plan and quickly takes off, now worried that the beast might launch a surprise attack from below, turning this whole mess into some twisted game of whack-a-mole. Jinx throws in another idea, telling our boy to use his compass eye, but that thing has totally lost it, spinning like mad since the monster seems to be circling underground like a maniac. Out of nowhere, Noroa steps right into a trap hole and barely manages to stop himself from falling, but in the process, he loses grip on his slime sword. Sly, sadly, drops straight into the belly of the beast. Noroa tries holding onto the rocks for dear life, but they start sliding, and he ends up falling too. As he's tumbling down, our boy starts thinking this might be where he meets his end, and just when he's on the verge of giving up, memories of everything he still wants to protect flash through his mind, pushing him to think up something fast. Right before he's about to be swallowed whole by the gluttonous monster, Noroa quickly reshapes his slime shield into a massive spider net that not only saves him from falling, but also traps the beast in place. He finally manages to catch it and feels confident that this time, there's no way the monster can dig its way out through another tunnel. As the whack-a-mole madness finally comes to a stop, Noroa starts feeling like this net trick looks oddly familiar, and soon remembers seeing something just like it in the spider boss room from one of those old dungeons he cleared way back. It hits him that coming up with something like this wasn't just luck, but the result of all those constant travels and battles he's been through, and it was only thanks to the slime twins that he managed to pull it off just in time. Now that he's got the monster trapped exactly how he wanted, he wastes no time yelling out and jabbing the needle into his bride equipment to kickstart her hijack ability. The rampage finally dies down, and as the madness clears, the monster's true form shows up, which happens to be a simple cursed gluttony mimic bag with one ridiculous condition. Turns out, it should never be left empty or it'll lose its mind, snap into another wild rampage, and probably eat the whole city again. After the calamity-level monster finally gets reduced to a harmless piece of equipment, our hero and Jinx can't help but celebrate, letting out a huge sigh of relief since that really was one heck of a close call. Jinx asks if it's safe to go near the creepy thing now, clearly finding it a bit nasty just to look at. But Noroa explains that the change of ownership probably reset the creature, shrinking it back down to its original form. The mimic slowly crawls up to Noroa and starts licking his feet, and just like you'd expect from someone obsessed with weird gear, he instantly falls in love with it, not even flinching at how gross it looks. Jinx tries to argue how anyone in their right mind could call something that disgusting cute, but Noroa genuinely doesn't see the problem. With a friendly tone, Noroa asks his new buddy to spit out the girl it swallowed earlier, clearly referring to Sly, and the mimic casually obeys without any fuss. As soon as Sly gets spat out, she starts crying and making a whole scene about how she was eaten alive. Noroa quietly thinks about how this gluttony mimic really will follow any order, so long as it's not left with an empty stomach. Instead of panicking, he keeps chatting with the bag like it's no big deal and tells Jinx to relax, brushing off the danger completely. Right at the last possible second before they all get buried alive, Noroa casually tells his new pet to use its devour skill, and just like that, the day is saved. Silu then shows up looking super relieved to see Noroa safe, but that mood changes real quick when she spots the bag and freaks out, asking if it's the same disgusting calamity from earlier. Noroa proudly introduces her to his new pet, calling it Mimi and assuring her that he's a good boy who won't bite. As soon as she hears him talk like that, Silu cheers up, clearly putting her trust in his words. Noroa goes on to explain that this magic bag is no ordinary item since it can store up to 1,000,000 things, while normal ones barely manage a slot or two and are still treated like national treasures. Jinx, on the other hand, only cares about one thing, and now that Mimi lets her carry an endless supply of food, she's finally at peace. Silu congratulates Noroa for turning a monster into a bag, and he humbly says that he owes the achievement to her and the twins, patting them both on the head. Once the immediate danger is over, Noroa starts thinking about asking Mimi to release all the people it has devoured. Jinx, of course, worries that his secret will be exposed, but Noroa decides it's important to set things right and asks Mimi to release everyone. As the humans start emerging from the bag, it becomes clear that time has stopped inside it, but Noroa is happy knowing they've been reunited with their loved ones. While hiding behind a tree, watching the joyful reunions unfold, Syrah spots Noroa and approaches him, asking what's going on. When she sees the bag, fear washes over her. She recognizes it as the same equipment she had encountered before and demands to know why Noroa has it now. Realizing that he can't keep the truth hidden much longer, Noroa decides to come clean and admits that he willingly equipped the bag himself. Syrah grows serious, asking if Noroa is actually using cursed equipment. After everything cursed equipment has done to bring ruin to her life, she pulls out her blade and points it at Noroa, arguing that she cannot allow him to pass. Such equipment, she claims, poses a serious threat to society. Noroa doesn't move an inch, having already expected this reaction. Calmly, he replies, sharing his philosophy that equipment exists solely to make people happy. He asks Syrah if she wishes to take him into custody, telling her that he will gladly accept any punishment she chooses to give him. Syrah lowers her blade, admitting that such an action would go against her sense of justice. She allows Noroa to pass. As she walks away, she adds that she stands no chance against an S-ranker like him, and that he had saved her and her lady right before her eyes. She further explains that while she disapproves of cursed equipment, she is willing to accept the equipment Noroa uses. The scene transitions to the aftermath of the destruction. Thankfully, there are no casualties, and the families that were displaced are ordered to be relocated to the capital. Whitaker expresses his gratitude to Noroa, saying that the disaster could have been much worse if it weren't for him. Noroa's perspective has shifted dramatically since he was once labeled as Noroa the Zero. He has learned to rely on his friends, growing stronger with each passing day. Eventually, the time arrives for Noroa to part ways and continue his journey. Syrah gives him a warm goodbye, though Noroa senses a certain coldness in her behavior since he revealed his secret. She holds her feelings inside, hiding them during their farewell. Noroa finds it heartbreaking to say goodbye so soon except for the whip the princess part. Speaking of which, the princess herself shows up, demanding that Noroa say to her face that she was nothing more than a plaything for him, spitting on her as he says it. She goes into a frenzy, as usual, and claims that she has always wanted a prince to speak such wicked words directly to her. The equipment researcher also shows up, expressing her gratitude to Noroa for everything he has done. She reassures him that she will never reveal his secret about the cursed equipment. Before he can leave, the Count hands him a letter. Noroa is puzzled about how the letter found him, especially since he never disclosed to anyone that he was staying at the Count's mansion. As they prepare to part ways, Lady Lusha's eyes well up with tears. Noroa tells her that they will meet again someday, although he knows deep down that his cursed equipment gathering journey may make that a difficult promise to keep. The scene shifts as they've only traveled a short distance from the castle, and Jinx is already starting to miss the place, probably recalling the tasty dishes she could devour there. They're all engaged in a healthy, lively conversation when the doll suddenly reminds Noroa about the letter, which he had almost forgotten about. Noroa quickly opens the letter, wondering who could have sent it. Inside, he finds a message claiming the writer knows about the lady from her dream. The writer calls him a sinner and invites him to come over if he wishes to learn more, threatening that if he doesn't show up, he would kick the bucket and hit the grave. For some reason, Noroa struggles to read the last part of the letter. He notices the address and the writer's name, discovering that she is some kind of master doll and her location is somewhere in the kingdom of Sonon. Silu points out that Sonon is a kingdom that greatly despises cursed equipment, and bringing one into the kingdom could result in a death sentence. Jinx wonders if it's a trap, and Noroa reflects on what they discussed when they first met and how all these events couldn't be mere coincidence. Maybe this master doll is the one pulling the strings behind everything. Considering how much the person seems to know about him, more than Noroa even knows about himself, he decides to head to Sonon. He can't shake the thought of who the girl from his dreams might truly be. With his mind made up, Silu takes flight, leading the way to their new destination. They stop at another city on the way where Jinx asks what the target's name is, to which he says the creep running wild in the streets at night is famously known as Gear Reaper. As expected, she says it sounds more like the special dish at a diner, making Noroa wonder if the only brain sits in her gut. It is said that the Reaper heads out at night and breaks people's equipment for fun, which fits the gloomy city way too well. He activates his cursed eye and locates the Reaper at once, so Noroa checks one last time with Jinx if they still plan to use the same trick. His grip tightens with anger as he thinks about a criminal bold enough to use one of his precious cursed gears for some twisted pleasure. You see, the duo arrives in the Holy Kingdom where cursed gear faces the strictest laws and users get shot the moment they're caught. However, he stays focused on the mission, even though this place basically feels like the bane of Noroa's existence. He tells Jinx to shut it before he ends up caught and executed when they suddenly hear a scream, probably from one of Reaper's latest victims. As he gets there, he freezes at the sight of a little girl and moves to help her right away. Our hero sees her sword lying in pieces and asks if she is at least okay. The girl's face clearly shows that something dangerous stands behind him, so he spins around fast and dodges the slash by a hair's width. With the girl's small head as a hinge, he pulls off a crouch kick so clean that it forces the Reaper to back off. The deviant loses it, so when the girl asks for her hero's name, he tells her to do something smart and run while he handles the villain. That leaves her blushing like a maiden in love until Noroa snaps her out of it and she finally heads off. He switches to full focus mode and tells the criminal that's one cool scythe he's holding and it would suck if it broke. The man wants to know who he is, so Jinx jumps out to flex her reputation before Noroa yeets her back into his hood and says he likes messing with his prey before ending them. Grinning at Noroa's pathetic Assassin's Creed cosplay, Mr. Reaper lets him know there's no way he stands a chance, since every piece of gear he's faced has already crumbled thanks to his broken scythe. With the nastiest face not even Hisoka from Hunter x Hunter can make, he flexes that his scythe is rank S. The man then dives on Noroa, but our hero simply stands there like a boss and blocks it head-on. Mr. Reaper just can't figure out how that's possible, and Noroa claps back that while his little toy might be cool, he himself wields a sword with a triple his rank. After he knocks the creep out cold, each of the girls steps up and leaves Mr. Reaper in total shock. But what really gets Noroa's attention is how he managed to hold back the whole time, since the Bloodlicker holds so much power that a single slip could have turned the guy into dust. He follows that up by showing the adorable slime twins some real appreciation for the assist. That's when Jinx tells the playboy to quit simping and points out that the scythe looks pretty cursed, just as she likes it. Named the Gear Breaker, the weapon drains durability from any gear and doesn't hurt humans, though it wrecks everything close if the owner doesn't keep it in check. That one detail immediately ruins its aura, so they lock it up inside Mimi, where it should stay chill forever. Right after Noroa stops the slime twins from arguing over who's earned more head pats, a squad of knights shows up and surrounds him. He looks totally stunned that the Inquisition caught up this fast. To top it off, their general pulls up with a smirk, saying they've not only tracked down the Grim Reaper, but also that Noroa's plague doctor mask makes him look just like the nation's most wanted, known as the Phantom. Playing it cool, Noroa tells them they've got the wrong guy as he recalls that the Phantom is known as the ultimate thief who pops out of the shadows to snatch up every cursed weapon he sets his eyes on. General Chester thanks him for giving the criminal some free clout and instantly launches at him to take out the filthy sinner. But Noroa just backflips over him like a legend, which leaves Blondie looking straight up humiliated in front of his squad, so he snaps and orders everyone to wipe the sinner out. Noroa blocks the incoming bullets using a massive slime shield and dips out right in front of Chester, landing on a nearby rooftop. The man curses the Phantom's name and swears that he's going behind bars someday. Jinx checks if Noroa's down for a fight, but he shuts it down, saying he won't let personal stuff mess with what's right, and also because those knights would melt with one swipe of his blade. So he decides it's time to head back home, where he gets welcomed by his cute saintess. He steps into a tiny room that works as their base, which Silula protects whenever they're out. While the twins drool over the thought of Silu's cooking, she shyly walks up to Noroa and lures Jinx into a trap box with food bait. Now with no one else around, she shares how much joy being his wife at home brings her while ignoring the yelling little dwarf in the can. Later, Jinx lashes out at the thirsty dragon girl, but Silula fires back that she would have totally ruined their moment. The next day, while the twins stay asleep, Silu asks how his day went and Noroa says he picked up a pretty cool weapon. Jinx complains that she's done with finding low-level cursed gear and wants to get out of the depressing place. But Noroa remembers they still lack the pass needed to reach the Holy City, which is the spot the mysterious letter pointed them toward. To make things harder, a strict cursed gear inspection is in place, so Noroa still has no clue how to sneak through. That's when he sees Silu holding a poster of his Phantom cosplay and asking who the guy is. Jinx looks shocked he never told her, and he admits the secret outfit feels kind of embarrassing. But Silu actually gets hyped after hearing the Phantom's backstory. She starts yapping about how cool it sounds, so Noroa drops a hint that it might be someone really close to her. Our dragon girl starts guessing all the wrong people, so he comes clean and apologizes for keeping it from her. Even so, she stays impressed by his honorable night gig, and while Noroa plays it cool, Mr. Krabs instantly cooks up a scheme to print money using his infamy. He tells her to keep dreaming and follows up with an idea on how they might actually get permits for the Holy City. He grins and says all they have to do is ask the guy who hands them out directly. Over at the Inquisition HQ, the general slams his desk, and the weird looks from his henchmen only add to his fury. He realizes that even if the Phantom helps keep the town safe, things are only truly secure when cursed gear is wiped out completely. That's when his secretary Lorais walks in and reports that the Reaper's weapon also ended up in the Phantom's hands, and they still have no clue how he pulls off his moves. She pauses before sharing the next bit, but finally says that some reports mention little girls yelling about headpats seen near the Phantom, which totally throws Chester off. It hits him right away that all the bizarre clues might be secret messages from the Phantom himself, and he seriously tells his secretary to find out exactly what getting a headpat is supposed to mean. He feels his deduction is pure genius and grins, thinking the Phantom ran because he saw his massive sword. His secretary tries to mention something about new recruits, but he swats the woman away and feels certain that he's finally about to win the next round just like the average league player. The following day at the Inquisition, our hero introduces himself as Noah Collector, the new recruit. Given that Sonon is known for its strict control over cursed equipment, Noroa devises a plan to infiltrate the ranks of the Mediction Inquisition in order to get an easy ticket to the capital. The lady, Lorais, from before appears again, confirming whether Noroa is level 15 and has a single slot. She now serves as his direct supervisor for the recruitment exam, showing a bit of concern. Noroa scored an A on the written test, but his practical evaluation was only a G grade, something he knows was intentional. He couldn't reveal his cursed equipment, so he did the best he could while staying true to his Noroa the Zero persona. Lorais explains that with such grades, Noroa wouldn't be able to become an investigator. However, Noroa immediately protests, arguing that he will make up for his performance with sheer passion, emphasizing that it's been his lifelong dream to serve under the Inquisition. The lady finds it odd as who on earth would die for such a silly job. But because he insists, she decides to assign him to a team with a random girl. A girl in a complete mess bursts through the door. Lorais tells her that she's late and introduces her to Noroa, informing him that they will be working together from now on. Noroa calls her a little girl, which she doesn't appreciate, and Lorais points out that they're the same age. This comment sparks an objection from Rika, who insists she doesn't need a companion. But Lorais explains that their test results are complete opposites, so they're stuck with each other for good. The formation of their new team marks the start of Noroa's journey as an investigator for the Inquisition. Just as Lorais leaves, Rika moves in close, pinning Noroa against the wall. She asks him his name, and it turns out Noroa has chosen the alias Noah. Noroa tries to flatter her, and to his surprise, it works. Rika then taunts him, saying she has no time to clean up after his mess and that he'd have to keep up with her pace. Noroa had planned to work solo, but now it would be suspicious if he did. Noroa goes over his plan, knowing there are transit permits somewhere in the building. While he could easily force his way to them after pinpointing the location using his compass eye, he decides to keep that as a last resort. For now, he focuses on gathering more information on the security and magic barriers surrounding the capital. Rika shouts at him, snapping him out of his thoughts, and orders him to follow her to the morning assembly. At the morning assembly, Chester Bill, the guy from before, scolds everyone for being late. They argue that Lorais held them back, but he dismisses it as a mere excuse. The commander, who happens to have 4 slots, is seen as a big deal. He calls everyone worthless dogs and orders them to get in line. The recruits are seen as stray dogs who only need to gather information on the cursed equipment, while the Inquisitors are labeled as hounds. This job is considered dangerous since many investigators have gone on rampages after coming into contact with cursed equipment. To the higher-ups, the agents are nothing more than disposable human trash. Chester then explains to everyone about the Phantom, calling him an outlaw, and briefs them on what they need to know. He then asks everyone for information on the Phantom, but when no one speaks up, he scolds them, calling them trash. After a full hour of yelling, he dismisses the assembly, telling them to search for cursed equipment before the Phantom does, threatening serious consequences if they fail to deliver results. Afterward, he approaches Noroa and asks if he's new, noticing his eye and asking about it. Noroa quickly covers it, saying he was born with it. To confirm his suspicions, the guy mutters some phrases he believes to be code words for the Phantom, grabbing Noroa by the collar. But when he gets no reaction, he lets go, realizing he misjudged the situation. The guy then slams into Noroa, but thanks to his recovery item, nothing happens. However, to avoid raising suspicion, Noroa fakes a fall, pretending to be affected by a delayed reaction. It wouldn't make sense for someone supposedly weak like him to take a punch from an op and not flinch. Everyone looks at Chester as Noroa makes him seem like the bad guy. Even Rika rushes over to check on him, worried if he's okay. Rika stands up for Noroa, telling Chester that he's a despicable man for bullying a newbie. Chester responds with disbelief, saying he never imagined Noroa to be this weak, then leaves with a half-hearted apology. She apologizes to Noroa for failing as a senior to protect him, but before she can get any more gloomy, she's surprised to see him upright and in one piece. She argues how he could be okay after being smashed into a wall nearly 10 meters away, but Noroa just shrugs it off, saying he's used to being flung around since he experienced it daily back in his hometown. He then accidentally pats her on the head. For a moment, Rika enjoys it, but just when she realizes what's happening, she gets angry all of a sudden and runs off. The unit then heads out on their first job, which is to investigate a haunted mansion. Noroa argues why they need to go to a place where supernatural activity is already confirmed. On their way there, they stumble upon a graveyard. Rika tells him to familiarize himself with the area since the paths are narrow and he might easily get lost. By this point, Noroa can confidently say that she's a kind and caring person. Rika gets a bit overly cocky and trips over a grave, knocking herself down. Noroa then taps into his inner mathematics genius, easily calculating the distance to the haunted mansion. Rika gets excited by his skills, and Noroa takes the opportunity to flatter her. When they arrive at the mansion, they learn it's infamous for the fact that no one ever returns once they go inside. The mansion is said to be built on top of a grave, and according to the intel they have, the mansion was constructed even before the graveyard itself. He asks Rika for her opinion on the mansion, only to find out that the girl is scared of ghosts. Taking the lead, he decides to comfort her and opens the unlocked door. He steps cautiously, but as soon as he enters the mansion, he feels a throbbing sensation, and before he can react, a sudden force makes him fall flat on the floor. It's the same feeling as when a cursed item is forcefully equipped onto someone. Worried, he quickly comes up with an excuse, telling Rika that he fainted due to a static shock, hoping to make her think he's scared of ghosts. His excuse works, and Noroa gets up to survey the condition of the mansion. There, he discovers that this SSS-ranked mansion bestows eternal youth on whoever stays, but at a terrifying cost of death if they leave. Noroa becomes spaced out, realizing that once he steps out of this place, he will be as good as dead. He bites his lip because it never hits him before that the rumor about no one making it out alive actually means the manor itself is cursed. Since he would kick the bucket the second he steps outside, he's now stuck in this forsaken place with a pocket-sized emotional support pet. He dodges her questions so his secret stays hidden and tells her he's fine, up until she starts freaking out at the creepy giggles echoing across the manor. Our Sherlock tells her it's just the sound of someone laughing and starts to feel like something other than a ghost is behind the scenes. Just then, a banner dripping with ketchup rolls down to welcome them, making the little girl scream like a little girl, while Noroa feels kind of pleased to finally get a proper welcome. Rika bawls her eyes out and says this feels like her worst nightmare coming to life, so he makes her short circuit by offering to explore everything on his own, mostly because he already knows who's behind it all, and he would get executed if she reported something as wild as a cursed house in the middle of the city. Since he can't leave, he sets his focus on finding a loophole in whatever condition the curse runs on. Our hero tells the little baby she can suck her thumb while he handles her demons, but she gets up with wobbly noodle legs and says she won't let him go alone. Rika offers Noroa her hand, which he gladly accepts, and it instantly clears out half her fear, though he quickly notices she is sweating more than a gamer on Red Bull. With that, the Scooby-Doo gang sets out to solve the mystery. Though just moments later, she spots a ketchup drawing on the wall and straight up starts crying as some musical instruments begin floating around and playing mid-air. Noroa treats the whole thing like a haunted house ride and stays chill, thinking it's probably just a ghost family out here vibing and living their best lives. Soon, he starts to realize the place feels like a full-on maze and the voice hasn't even made an appearance yet. Meanwhile, Rika keeps ranting that mental warfare is totally illegal, so Noroa says he's down to hit the hay for the day. She keeps her strong senior act going and says she has no choice if he's tired. Then they head back toward the entrance, which has now turned into a brick wall. They both stare at it and try to figure out if it was even there when they came in. But Noroa starts to feel a creeping dread as the ground begins to shake. The duo instantly bolts for their lives once they realize the wall is coming right at them, and the goofball suddenly loses all strength in her shaking legs. As soon as our hero sees this, he tells her to grab his hand, but knowing he cannot match speed with her stubby legs, he straight up mounts her on his shoulder in the most embarrassing way, and comforts her by saying he's really good at moving stuff. Rika begs him to put her down, but he savagely ignores her and keeps his focus on figuring out the secret behind the voice until he realizes the walls are actually closing in. Knowing they're about to get crushed into the world's least tasty sandwich, he decides now's the time to get serious. He casually grabs his sobbing senpai and tells her to hold on as tightly as she can, which leaves her super confused about whatever he's planning to do. Our hero then pulls out his massive sword since he already knows this mysterious enemy won't back off unless he goes all out and launches himself straight at the wall to slice it down. The wall shatters instantly into giant nacho pieces, which genuinely surprises him with how soft it turns out to be. He finally lets go of her when the teary-eyed little lady asks how long he plans on holding her like that. The legend lets her go and casually says the wall just exploded on its own. And then she wonders why the ghost keeps chasing them when an actual explosion goes off right over their heads. A giant banner drops down from above, and it turns out that is the ghost's way of congratulating them. Bro is seriously confused and wonders if the ghost enjoys playing with them for entertainment. On the other hand, Rika looks like she's given up on life and just sits there with the most deadpan face. Watching her ramble on, Noroa figures he doesn't have much time left before her potato brain can't take much longer. So he apologizes to her and suddenly yells that he sees the entrance. Rika lights up the moment she hears she can finally go home, though Noroa leaves her totally dumbfounded when he says he's planning to stay overnight. The clueless cutie begs him to come with her, but he grabs her shoulders and says outright that he loves haunted houses so much the second he walked into this one. He knows it is where he wants to spend the rest of his life. With that, sobbing senpai runs off blindly while Noroa finally closes the gates and lets out a sigh of relief knowing he's only got himself to worry about now. Jinx pops out of his hood now that Rika is gone and officially names the luxury mansion Jinx Castle. As he explains that it's way bigger on the inside and more of a maze than an actual house, Jinx casually lets him know the place is actually a dungeon. He remembers her saying the dungeon itself is the curse and shows her its condition, which she ends up finding pretty cool. Wondering if she hit her head or something, Noroa tells her he can't just carry an entire house around in his pocket like her, but she says it's still a cursed item, which means it can be carried. She explains every piece of gear has a core that counts as its real body, so even if it shifts shape or location, he can move it anywhere as long as he gets his hands on the core. Thinking over her words for a second, our hero finally has a big brain moment and thanks his sidekick for her knowledge on something other than food. With that, he activates his cursed eye, and it instantly locks onto something surprisingly close. But when he looks in that direction, our hero is completely stunned to see that the core isn't a stone or a cube, but the ghost of a really evil-looking girl who asks if they're planning to leave the house too. Noroa argues with the ghost, insisting that he won't leave, knowing there's a toll to pay if he does. Jinx points out that the ghost seems to be the owner of the voice he's been hearing, and with the disappearance of the compass eye, it's clear that the ghost is the core of the mansion dungeon. The ghost girl, however, denies being a core and introduces herself as Cuckoo, asking what a core even is. Noroa and Jinx introduce themselves to Cuckoo and inquire about the mansion. Cuckoo replies that she's just as clueless, having been wandering the mansion herself, and the last thing she remembers is that it was the same for her. Cuckoo notices that Noroa seems happy with her hospitality, and she's surprised, thinking it's the first time anyone has felt that way. Misunderstanding his tone, she takes it as a love confession and promises to be even more hospitable to him. She explains that she's capable of doing anything in the mansion, from expansions to renovations. Just as Noroa confirms his suspicions, he becomes certain that with the ghost girl's cooperation, things might actually work out in his favor. He asks Cuckoo if she can take control of the house, to which she responds with a seductive tone, suggesting that they'd have to deepen their relationship before she could do such renovations. Of course, the straightforward buffoon spoils everything by casually mentioning that he wishes to leave the mansion. At this, Cuckoo's demeanor shifts dramatically, her attitude doing a complete 180. She tells him that now he must play a game with her, and if he manages to defeat her, she'll give him the treasure he needs. Cuckoo pulls out a ball and explains that the game for today is tag. With simple rules, Naroa must touch her before dawn, but if he fails, he'll have to play in the mansion with her forever. With that, the ghost girl floats away, taking off to get a head start. Naroa sees the game as an easy one and dashes toward Cuckoo, closing the distance quickly. However, just before he can touch her, the ghost girl vanishes into the wall. Naroa tries to use his eye to track her, but since she's shifting inside the wall so rapidly, it becomes impossible for him to locate her. Jinx offers him some hope, reminding him that there's still plenty of time left in the night to figure it out. Just then, Cuckoo reappears and, as if she's a pro Fortnite player, forges an entire staircase out of thin air. Naroa protests, saying that should be considered cheating, but Cuckoo simply shrugs, saying that the mansion's rules don't forbid it. She then vanishes again, passing through the wall, and Naroa reacts by using his slime sword to cut through it. To his surprise, he finds Cuckoo lounging in the bathroom, still fully dressed. She quickly flies away again, continuing her playful antics. Eventually, Cuckoo pauses for a moment, asking Naroa to catch her. Seizing the opportunity, Naroa uses Slide to cover the distance and reaches out to touch her. But just before he can, Cuckoo rotates the mansion, sending Naroa tumbling to the ground. She disappears through the roof, and the game of tag continues. Exhausted and drained from all the running, Naroa keeps trying to catch her, but the challenge grows harder with each passing moment. Just then, the ghost girl appears right behind him, and Naroa swings his sword, smashing the slime girl into the wall. Meanwhile, Cuckoo seems to be thoroughly enjoying herself. She then tells Naroa that there's only an hour left until dawn, and he doesn't have any time left to rest, teasing that she'll soon have him as her hubby for eternity. Fuming, Naroa slams against the wall in frustration, questioning whether he should just give up since he's nowhere near catching the ghost girl. In the middle of his crisis, Jinx calls out, grinning, that she's hungry, and reminds Naroa that she knows he'll pull through like he always does. She practically forces him into a picnic in the middle of a life or death chase. As they dig into their food, Naroa asks Jinx what exactly Cuckoo is, since the whole dungeon trial feels incredibly strange to him. Jinx explains that Cuckoo is the soul of the dungeon, describing how it's like an equipment with a soul contract between someone and their armor, and how the soul can develop an ego of its own over time, comparing it to herself and the twins. She explains that this phenomenon is exclusive to cursed equipment, where the armor itself becomes self-aware. As a cursed equipment enthusiast, Naroa feels a bit sorry for the mansion, wondering how it must feel not to be equipped at all. Jinx then adds that for her, not being equipped felt like being stuck and unable to move, always yearning for someone to scratch her back. The slime girls nod in agreement with Jinx, explaining how they too felt pretty lonely, suggesting that Cuckoo must feel the same way. They point out that the poor mansion gets a new owner every once in a while, and before it knows it, the owner dies, which helps explain why Cuckoo had been so desperate to welcome them, and now why she's trying to keep them from leaving. An idea suddenly strikes Naroa's brain, which is definitely on par with that of Jimmy Neutron's. Jinx acts as though she expected this, and acts confident that her potential hubby will somehow make it out of the mansion alive. The scene shifts to Cuckoo's memories of the first time she woke up inside the mansion without even realizing she had turned into a cursed gear. All alone in the giant house, she would sometimes see people show up and keep her company for a bit, but they always vanished to the shadow realm right after. She went through that loneliness for 100 years and slowly started to wonder if she was just born to be forever alone. Everything changes though, when she sees a guy suddenly appear and say he's a huge fan of haunted mansions. She starts thinking he might actually be different from all the others, but now he's leaving just like they did. Naroa tells her he's heading out, all according to Jinx's evil little scheme that says Cuckoo has to stop him if he tries to leave in the middle of the game. Our hero keeps up his act, so Cuckoo reminds him he will go to Narnia the moment he steps outside. He doesn't flinch though, and shocks her by saying he has no other choice. The ghost girl is destroyed when he tells her he can't play with her anymore, even after they clearly had a lot of fun with it. She tries to bribe him with shiny treasures and yummy food and promises she'll play with him forever and ever. As much as Naroa would love that, but he does not have all the time in the world. Just the thought of him leaving drops her to the floor, and she starts shapeshifting the mansion itself to keep him alive, while memories of all her so-called friends who met the same end flood her mind. The little girl throws a tantrum like someone just punched her grandma, and this time she summons 2 giant ghost hands to drag him back by force. Cornered with no escape and the door right behind him, the ghost hands slam down over him while she keeps bawling. The girl finally calms herself after squashing him like a Krabby Patty and keeps yelling that she never wants to be the lonely girl ever again. That's when a warm hand suddenly reaches out to Cuckoo and gently lets her know he never meant to leave her behind like that. He tells her it wouldn't hurt to learn some manners and actually listen when someone talks, and then adds that he was only wrapping up the game for the day and planned to return the next morning. She asks how he could even think about leaving, so he grabs her hand, swings the doors open without flinching, and says they'll catch the sunrise together. Seeing the beautiful sunrise pulls tears from her eyes since it's been decades since she last saw one. Bro then steps out and makes her sweat bullets thinking he's about to drop dead right there. But Noroa casually farms some aura points with a smooth line before revealing that he totally remembers having just one leg inside the mansion when she forcefully equipped herself onto him, which means he actually survived. That means there's a loophole that keeps him alive and perfectly fine as long as he has even a pinky toe inside. Noroa says he'll need her help and promises he'll keep his word about claiming the reward for clearing the dungeon. A few hours later, Rika Naruto runs toward the mansion as fast as she can, full of shame for ditching her junior the night before. While she comes screaming that she's there to save the day, his little senior finds out the giant mansion pulled a Perry the Platypus and straight up vanished. While the crying girl runs around looking for him, he just strolls up from a distance and casually waves at her. In the end, the case closes with a report claiming the mansion vanished overnight, so Rika instantly decides the Phantom is obviously the one behind it. The general's secretary sees through the cap right away, but the savage shorty clings to her genius deduction like her life's on the line. Secretary Lorise lets out a sigh and finally agrees with Rika, though she keeps staring at our guy for way too long and makes him feel super uncomfortable. While her eyes stay locked on his bracelet, Rika swoops in to save him by ranting that the Phantom is so cool he straight up picked up a whole freaking mansion and dipped. Watching these two clowns go at it, Lorise says she's had enough and tells them to just go rest. On their way out, Rika gives Noroa credit for his efforts, and he thanks her back, feeling pretty glad they pulled off their first mission without any real problems. The next day, he heads to work beyond exhausted since he hasn't gotten a wink of sleep. Cuckoo suddenly shows up and asks if he's really fine with the choice he made, her eyes full of concern. She says even a single night noticing her could lead to his execution. You see, he asked Cuckoo to shift the mansion into a piece of gear he could actually wear, so she turned it into a bracelet instead. She warns it would be a nightmare if the Inquisition officers saw through his James Bond-level disguise for sneaking cursed girls, but our guy stays chill since not even the big-brained Secretary Lorise figured him out, so he sees no reason to stress. After hearing that, she appears and asks what game they should play next, which the twins also hear and instantly start bugging him to join. Their noise wakes Jinx, and Cuckoo enjoys the chaotic vibe, though that stops when he politely tells them all to quit yapping. Noroa reminds them they still need to stay low-key until they score a real permit, which gets Cuckoo curious since she's still not fully in the loop. Back at the Inquisition, Lorise seems impressed that there's apparently nothing the Phantom can't steal, so she gives our guy's file a serious side-eye, figuring it might just be the perfect moment to set up a clever little booby trap for her top target. In the meantime, our hero is busy gathering more and more cursed equipment. This time, he gets his hands on a sound-eating mollusk, which comes with the condition that if its cork is opened, it will try to eat the owner's ear. Thanks to the investigator's info, his collection is progressing smoothly, but he still hasn't made any headway on the permit. Just after he retrieves the sound-eating item, Rika joins him at the same location, bursting out that this Phantom guy always steals the spotlight by getting to their target first. She finds it a bit odd that he only goes after the equipment they're investigating, but Noroa quickly comes up with an excuse, calling it a mere fluke or coincidence. Out of nowhere, Rika then reveals that she's acquainted with this Phantom guy and, unexpectedly, looks up to him. She isn't even mad at him for stealing their accomplishments. Rika then spots Noroa's bracelet and asks about it. By this time, Noroa has become a pro at coming up with excuses and quickly spins another one, saying that he brought the bracelet along when he stayed at the Haunted Palace. Rika freaks out, warning him that it could be pretty dangerous. She then changes the topic, mentioning that they have a day off tomorrow, and runs off, saying it's family time for her. The next day, Noroa gathers his team and activates the parasite skill, forging it into a house. He decides to follow Rika's example and try having some family time of his own. Silu gets excited but freaks out when she's greeted by the sleepy ghost lady, who appears holding a pillow. Silu gives Noroa a death stare, asking why he brought another girl along, but then introduces herself to the ghost. The slime twins jump over her, eager to argue that they could play any game today because they won't lose this time. Cuckoo seizes the opportunity and announces the game of the day as house. She points at Noroa, making him the hubby, and asks who's best suited to act as the bride. Silu quickly nominates herself as the bride as the house game begins. As the act unfolds, Noroa steps into the house, where Silu greets him, playing the role of the dutiful wife. She thanks him for all his hard work and gets uncomfortably close, teasing him about how he hasn't been giving her enough attention lately. Her sudden intimacy with Noroa enrages the ghost girl, causing her to completely go off script. Cuckoo storms in, holding a knife, and threatens Noroa, accusing him of promising her that he would break up with the woman and marry her instead. The entire situation quickly spirals into chaos, with Noroa being labeled the bad husband, while the others pressure him to file for divorce. Even Jinx jumps in, declaring that she'd be the only wife Noroa would ever need. Noroa is forced to choose, and just as he thinks the situation can't get any worse, the slime girls show up in bridal costumes, ready for the marriage ceremony. The day passes by in the blink of an eye, and the next day rolls around. Rika tells Noroa that she had a blast playing with her siblings, mentioning that they're all carrying a ton of luggage. Noroa takes a peek, only to realize it's all cursed equipment. He wonders where they're planning to take it. Just then, Lorise leads them to a cursed site, making it clear that this is the graveyard for the cursed equipment. Noroa had suspected such a place would exist, but he finds it unsettling to see how these items have been destroyed here. It makes him uneasy, knowing that one wrong move could send his family to the same fate. While Noroa understands he can't save the already destroyed equipment, he starts to think of ways he might be able to save the ones that haven't been destroyed yet. Just as Noroa is about to touch one of the cursed items, Rika quickly stops him, explaining that he shouldn't do that. Together, they dig a grave for the equipment and toss it in. As they do, Noroa spots a large cross and wonders if it, too, might be a cursed item. Out of nowhere, Lorise asks Noroa for his thoughts on Phantom, eager to hear his opinion. Rika jumps in, claiming that she likes the guy. When Noroa wonders if the lady suspects something, she drops a bombshell. It turns out that Lorise is a pro-Phantom supporter, even calling his existence justified. She then asks the duo if they have any business tonight, before informing them about an emergency mission. They're to head to the Ravanyard Cathedral to capture Phantom. As the scene shifts, we find the nasty villain Chester preparing with his underlings to deal with the so-called Phantom once and for all. Noroa had learned from Lorise that they received a warning from Phantom, claiming he was going to take the stone closest to heaven from the cathedral. However, Noroa doesn't recall doing anything like that, which makes it clear that some criminal activity might be involved. With most of the Inquisitors out of the headquarters, Noroa sees this as the perfect opportunity to sneak in and steal a permit, hoping it will finally grant him access to the Holy City. At the cathedral, Chester starts yelling for everyone to catch the thief, no matter what, while some guy at HQ feels insanely bored and wishes something fun would happen. His partner tells him to quit whining before the commander hears, and as he looks around all confused, a monster looking like Licky Lick dives in from above to gobble him up whole. Our Phantom appears on the windowsill while Mimi happily digests her fresh snack. Meanwhile, Jinx whines that she's also super bored since everything is way too easy and guesses these dudes might actually just be Phantom knockoffs. Right after, using the cover of his sound-blocking artifact, Noroa activates his cursed eye and gets surprised when it locks onto the top of the tower where permits to the Holy City are kept. Since he's done his homework as an undercover agent, Noroa slides over to the general's office, where two curvy statues of the guy are standing guard like it's a fashion show. He ignores them and checks the door, but it's locked, so the Phantom pulls out his best hidden weapon, little girls who do all the dirty work, and sends the twins to slip under the door and unlock it from inside. The weirdness only gets worse when they spot all the shrines the blonde guy has built for himself, and Noroa walks straight toward the quest marker. Sly pulls out her finest phantom impression and tells him to hold her beer while she picks the lock in record time, earning herself some mighty wholesome head pats. When they find the permit tucked inside the drawer, our guy lights up, thinking the mission turned out to be a total breeze. That excitement fades fast though, as his eyes nearly pop out after spotting a line that needs an officer's signature, so the job clearly isn't done yet. Noroa feels crushed after everything he just went through when he hears a familiar idiot yelling on the other side of the doors. Suddenly, the blonde general smashes through the entrance with a dramatic explosion, only to find the place completely empty. His rage keeps growing from the humiliation of his master plan flopping, while the phantom clings to the ceiling right above him like a cat. Noroa's a bit shocked that Chester caught up so quickly and figures the note might have been a setup the whole time, so he decides to dip right then and there. But before he can, something slams into his shoulder, and he spots someone directly in front of him. To make things worse, his sound barrier fizzles out at that exact moment and ends up drawing Chester's attention. However, the one Chester actually catches turns out to be a different phantom, so our hero bolts as fast as possible, while the general stares up to find another lookalike right above him, which ends up being his own statue falling down. He barely saves it from smashing into pieces as the other phantom calls out to Noroa and casually invites him to join their squad. After that, when Chester finally reaches the scene, he's stunned that the phantom has already vanished and finds only his men and secretary checking out the place. When he demands an explanation, she calmly says she's in charge of security. He orders her to get out of his sight, but she refuses since she's currently filling in for the general who ditched his post mid-shift, which gets under his skin even more. Slamming his hands on the ground, he yells that there's no way she didn't notice the phantom, but the calm and collected secretary just says she'd have reported it if she saw him, plain and simple. Chester takes a long breath and then grabs her by the collar with a look that says he's about to go full Johnny Depp on her as he warns that he keeps one eye open every night. With that, he asks which side she's really on and orders her to go find the phantom, then barks at all his men that the target is still nearby. Once she steps back into the office, she finally lets out a sigh of relief, locks the door and apologizes to someone for having to hear the general lose his mind like that. She quietly wonders if she made the right call, and Noroa pops out from behind the curtains to ask if she's truly okay with hiding the most wanted thief, though she doesn't seem too bothered since she's got her own phantom costume ready. Realizing she's the fake phantom, he's hit with a bunch of questions, especially after seeing her argue with the general while she just pours tea like it's no big deal. Lifting the cup carefully, Noroa keeps himself in check and avoids giving anything away, but then Lorraine suddenly drops the offer she's always wanted to make. Out of nowhere, she asks him to be her partner in crime and instantly dives into the plan. She says it's obvious now that cursed equipment is scattered all across the city and drops the bomb that the Inquisition has been the one distributing it, leaving him absolutely speechless. What's more shocking is that the one behind everything turns out to be the man sitting at the very top. When Noroa clearly doesn't buy it, Lorais drops the same bag he saw the general carrying earlier right in front of him and reveals it's packed with cursed equipment, and then explains that exposing that son of a gun has been her plan all along. What other shocks await Noroa in this cursed city? Can he really outplay the top dog pulling the strings from behind the scenes? Drop a phantom down in the comments if you want the next part, because it's about to hit the fan. If you're enjoying the story, slam that like button and subscribe for more epic twists. See you in the next video.